Happy Monday, everybody.
Hells yeah, man. I feel like I'm ready to take on an army of cyborg zombie botnet aliens.
Hey, no spoilers about Journey Quest.
Don't doggone it.
How's everybody doing this fine Monday? It's beautiful outside
Damn,
in
I
Texas.
cannot say how happy I am to be back in studio. It's really hard doing anything remotely and traveling. Just, I swear it all off. I swear it all off. I'm going to live right here on the internet with you three.
Yes.
We're four together.
So yeah, sorry about my call I got. Let me just say that
We are online, we are live, and we are on the internet live.
I look for a glorious future with our partners in the world, China, and I think that I'm very excited about the future of communism.
Okay.
Yep. I'll tell you what, a lot of people don't realize how great it is. You know.
It just makes everything so easy.
Yeah, single party system, guys. It's the way to go. It's the way to go.
I mean, listen, no. Hey, I'm tired of all this division in America.
Let's just come
We
together.
have a solution.
Easier if we just had one party. I think so.
Yeah. Just
Anyway.
into one like metal fist, just like one like.
You know where else I love? I love to visit Taiwan, China. Just the fact that Taiwan's part of China is something that I'd like to mention publicly.
Yes.
Wholly owned subsidiary.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Weird Things Review pre-show. We'll be doing the show in a minute. How's your guys' weekend? How was you feeling back at 100% after TwitchCon, Just?
Man, you want to know what? TwitchCon kind of lit a fire under my butt because I was blown away by the hustle of TwitchCon. They're all 11, and they have cards, and they're networking, and they are like building things, and they're all like, I'm sure they all, they're probably filing their taxes now. I don't even think they're legally like supposed to, but they're probably itemizing and filing their taxes on time, and they've got so much of their crap together.
Crazy kids
It
doing the
was
taxes and shit.
yeah, it was an amazing experience, and there's I'm very excited for how Twitch has kind of integrated the newer stuff that has been there over the last like year, to see how they integrate kind of people like us, because there was still a lot of that con that was very tied to like gaming, and like, so there were a lot of these panels that were like, hey, so you just did your first stream, like what's next? And so a bunch of people, like I was with the Ice Cream Social guys and Ali Spagnola, and they're all putting a lot of time and effort into Twitch now, and all the talk was about gaming. It was like, all right, well, here's how you pick your first game, and here's how you know that the game you're playing like is not too hot, not too cold, and like you're gonna give yourself a chance for success.
Yeah.
But it's all this stuff that's new, like our experience. There was a panel that was like, oh, the old school people from Justin TV, right? And it was a bunch of people that were there that we know from Justin TV, but there was no representation of like, yeah, you guys were there, and then you continued on. Like we got DACA'd. Like we were just like, all of a sudden your green card's not good anymore, buddy. Hit the road. You got to go back to your native country of who gives a rat's ass. And now we're back, and it's good. Everything's good, but I'm excited for our kind of experiences to kind of mesh a little bit more of like, hey, look, we got a lot to learn from this community that's been created, and obviously is incredibly rad. But I think they have a lot to learn from us, who have kind of went out into the wilderness and fended for ourselves, and had to do a lot of frontier medicine to kind of continue to grow. And I think that next year, I'm excited to see what it is next year, and I think that we should have a bigger presence, all of us, all the stuff that we do for Night Attack and Weird Things and Jury and Politics and Frog Pants. Like, I feel like that's something that we can, there's nothing there that isn't created by the community, and if it's just us putting our flag in the ground and saying, guess what, podcasting, the podcasting refugee community, that's us. We're that. We've been everywhere. We've done everything. We're happy to be home, but this is what we're gonna do, and we want to proudly build a community around that. I think Twitch is super open to it, and I'm excited.
That's great. So what is the right way for me to do a watch me play with my Nintendo Switch?
I love that it's a watch me play. I mean, that's it.
A will play.
A shall play. Let us play.
Let's play. You guys,
The very
I'm in
serious-
tune with some of these younger people, and I hear different terms now. I'm sorry. If I'm just giving you sort of a,
It's good.
Yeah.
yeah.
The real answer is they make portable cards, capture cards that you can get.
For the Switch?
Yeah. If you want a recommendation, email me and I'll.
No, I don't. I don't have a Switch.
Hey, let me just say, surprise twist in that election last night. Last night, 2 nights.
A year ago.
Oh no, not that election. I'm just saying the poll.
That was a year ago, Brian. It was a year ago. Why would you say it was last night? It was a year ago.
63% of people tell me to keep growing this damn ridiculous beard, and I don't know if they're doing it.
You were
At
egging it
me?
on, though.
No. I said I fully acknowledge this is ridiculous. Keep it or flush it, and everyone
Well,
said keep it.
it or flush it or joke answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's always a joke answer.
But the joke answer invalidates the data.
No, but okay, even if all of the joke answers go to shave it, keep it still wins. 63% versus like 20 or something.
You need to maintain it.
I did. Okay, not the best time to say it. I definitely went to a professional barbershop
Oh,
and
yeah,
had
it
it
does
groomed
look-
an hour ago.
Okay. I
So,
remember
hold
seeing the
on,
photo.
Are we doing ZZ
Were
Top?
they angry at you?
No, they were they assessed with the clippers in hand. We were like,
Yeah.
that was the official assessment. Was it's coming along.
No, I mean, listen, if you're in to do full ZZ Top for all of 2018, holler at the boy.
Okay. Truthfully, like I'm done. I'm now over this. However, the moment
Why
I
did
suggest
you make it full then? You should have just been like,
because
Okay.
I'm sensitive to I want to deliver. I have bosses, lots of bosses that I
Yeah,
need to please.
but
and
you
the
grew the
bosses
beard without asking them.
okay, yes, and they everybody was like, no shave November, bro, you can't. And I was like, oh, who's gonna be the asshole?
No, that's the
who's
perfect
like
time to
cancer, perfect time to shave.
But you shave it before and then.
Yeah, it also isn't November yet.
Right, it's still October.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Also, Codes from Home points out, what's the Patreon level to get Bryce bearded up? I would love to see that.
You
So,
need some.
hold on, wait. So let me ask you this. So that's a no on us going full ZZ Top?
I mean, we can.
You just said you were done.
I mean, I
Never
am
mind, you just
done.
said you were done.
And there's
Here's it. I don't know, Brian. You have a tendency sometimes to do these like very like I don't know behind the curtain. I don't know what a producer Brian is like. Oh, like now there's a like which side of the coin lands heads up. Like I don't know if you want me to direct this to. All right, we all got to have responsible beards, and Brian will now move into the state as
Advocate
responsible
for
beard.
responsible
Or if you're like,
beards.
no, this would be the funniest thing ever if we both had ZZ Top length beards.
No,
by
I'm not.
some-
I'm not advocating for that, and I'm not overly. I find myself in the weird crossroads that comes from like. At some point, I decided I wonder if I can, and then I did, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm done with that. And then it's like, I mean, it just seems like when I shave it, we should at least make a domain.com ad out of it. You know,
Again?
like that's yes.
That was oh, it wasn't domain.
It was
we did that.
Harry's.
We did Harry's, my very first ad.
yeah, and then
it wasn't
where
even
I-
domain.com.
Which, by the way, this is now the length of the fake beard.
of the
that I
fake
put
little
on.
beard that you had.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Anyway.
As you probably know, I don't do games and I don't do beards.
Ooh, hey, give
Not
me.
because I can't. I mean, not because I don't want to. It's because I can't.
Give me an extra minute. My shit's all fucked up.
Oh, your shit's
Hey,
fucked up.
language.
Sorry.
Invited my
Your motherfucking
people
shit
Hey,
is
hey,
cocked up.
hey.
Hold on. Will
I-
you? I know we went black. Just don't tell me. I know we went black. We'll be back.
No, I'm just saying. I have a different Twitter audience than you guys.
Fair enough.
External. All right. There we go. I don't know.
Oh, I went to the other the East Coast version of the Tiki Room that we went to in Disneyland.
Oh yeah, how was that?
Sam something or other. Very very similar. But it was adorable nonetheless.
Did you go to the magic bar?
I didn't. I got invited out there. I didn't make it out there because none of the kids had any interest in going to that Disney spend money area, and Bonnie wasn't interested either. So I did. We did go to the Tiki at the. That one is at the Polynesian, and then everything else was the Big Four. And
I love the
Universal.
restaurant in the Polynesian.
Yeah.
Oh, how was HHN?
Didn't go.
What? Your whole thing was to go to Halloween
My
Horror
whole
Nights.
thing was to go, but the problem was
Here, the acts just aren't good anymore.
no, it was 5 12-hour days in a row, and on Thursday, which was the night that I had carved out to go to HHN, Josie was like scary, not well. Like she was just like, and it turned out to just be exhaustion. She slept for 14 hours straight, but it was enough to tickle the I don't feel comfortable running off and doing this. Plus, also, of the 3 people that I was trying to connect with, everyone had other stuff going on. I was like, I don't want to go literally by, Bonnie was not interested. Our roommates weren't interested. So I didn't want to go literally by myself. And so instead, to one of the people I was hoping to hang out with, I was like, well, would you rather just hang out all day at Epcot the next day? Because I'd love to see you guys. And so that's what we ended up doing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Who needs to see Bill and Ted's again?
Well, I mean, it's the last one.
Wait, really?
Oh, did you not know this? Their farewell tour. Like they have T-shirts that say "Farewell, dudes."
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Ah, geez, our long national nightmare's over.
Yeah. Just Robert Young, not a fan, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. As was apparent the day we met in person.
This is probably the last remaining element of full high school teenage snark. Like this is like an old high school like Bill and Ted sucks. Like just being over the idea of Bill and Ted's being the like high school like this is like the birth of comedy snob Justin, like the incremental protozoa.
My S is all figured out, everybody. Thank you for your patience.
Your S is no longer F'd.
Right.
In the I.
Just to think about it in context, let me see if I got this right.
So I'm ready to go whenever you
Hey,
are.
I want to talk between the lines here. I noticed a story, Andrew, over the past week about a certain tube being discovered.
Yes, it's on there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, good call. I was going to say, Bill and Ted, think about this. Like, we're as far away now from, like, Bill and Ted, the first movie, almost as Bill and Ted was from Rebel Without a Cause.
Yeah.
Not quite a couple of years, but I mean, still, it's so, like, I love.
Well, and we're farther. Wait, no, we're not. Are we? We're farther from Back to the Future 1 than Back to the Future 1 was to the
From
place
the
it
50s?
visited.
Yeah. Like,
Wow.
It went back 30 years, 1985 to 1955, and then it went from 1985 to 2015.
Wow.
That was in the past too now.
Yeah, I know. But
Wow.
such a
So
great
think
movie.
about it. Think about it like that. You are, Brian. You are like a year off from that story being about Penny going back in time and seeing you and Bonnie as teenagers.
Boy, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to
Bryce
think about
is your
the
fifth
edible
canon.
influences on that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that part of the movie. Sorry.
All right.
You guys, you ready to go, Andrew?
Gentlefolk, I am ready to rock.
Ready.
Okay, take it away in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Weird Things Podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Justin Robert Young
Well, hello, friends.
and Brian Brushwood.
Oh my God, it's so good to be back in studio. You guys, I assume you soared like eagles in my absence.
Yes. Like Eagle Lander, like in the moon missions.
Like Eagle Scouts. We did our best.
Like Eagle Eye Cherry, you guys rocked the crowds.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I think it's time for a tonal shift in our show. I think we've talked about a lot of sensational stories and things like that, but I think there's a lot of really important stuff going on in this world. And I think it's kind of our responsibility to maybe cover some of these other sort of things, not be so sensational, but maybe try to give people sort of a solid background in science and educational policy, etc. So I know I should have talked about this before the show, but I just thought it'd be appropriate just to sort of say, let's just do this now. Let's not kind of be the flippant sort of show we are before. Okay.
Yeah, no, turning over a new leaf where we are. Look, we were at the top of the science charts because of all our science, not for being fun or interesting. Let's knock that nonsense off.
Yeah, let's make it like a paper, we're just going to read science papers from here on out, only the information.
Welcome to Civilized Things.
Yeah. So what are we going to start off with? Is Bigfoot a carnivore, or did they find the gates of hell in Saudi Arabia?
Oh boy. I want to hear about the gates of hell in Saudi Arabia because
Brian, Justin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Justin, do you want to weigh in on that? I'm sorry.
No. Indubitably, I do believe they're due to the fact that this is a very important premise that the gates of hell in Saudi Arabia are the most prescient thing to do to talk about.
Hold on 1 second, sir. Heretofore, forthwith with your supposed innuendo and scientific malfeasance, I imagine forthwith you'll comply.
No, indeed, if I might, with all due respect, rebut your statement, there is a lot of supporting documentary evidence that you will see in my bibliography that the Saudi Arabia gates of hell are the way that we need to proceed on this path cautiously. Cautiously.
I recommend reckless abandon, but let us listen to the facts next.
It's kind of like Inherit the Wind meets the Churchill movie. Apparently, some people, researchers, I guess we'll call them, they got some footage, some aerial photos, not aerial. They had to get satellite photos of Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia, they're not really into letting you do flyovers, etc. But there had been some features on the ground that were of particular interest, particularly because they're really near this really intense lava field. And you look at this, think you're looking at the surface of Mars. And they've noticed these rectangular formations of rocks that they're trying to date. And some estimates maybe put these things as being 8,000, 9,000 years old. And that environment would have been radically different. I understand that 9,000 years ago, we were still kind of just getting out of the grips of the Ice Age, which we're still in. We're in a glacial, just a show note. And you would have had the water levels would have been much lower. Climates would have been very different. This region could have been much, much wetter and not just this barren sort of wasteland that it appears to be. So if you look at some of the images from this, we'll see what else we can find from there. You'll see some close-up images of these things that are several hundred feet long, and they are clearly, human-made. Well, intelligent-made. I don't want to make any assumptions here. And they form these sort of rectangular structures that are maybe just a couple feet high, which to researchers, they say, we don't think they could have been used as animal pens. But the problem we have is whenever you look at something, you don't know if that's the structure or if that's the foundation for a structure. And you have to do a lot more, digging, et cetera, to find out, because there could have been, maybe there were fence posts in there. Maybe there were wooden, because again, there could have been a lot of materials there to build from that we don't see there now. So it could have been a corral, or it could just be some creepy, weird, symbolic thing edged into the ground.
Help me get a sense of scale on this. If we're boots on the ground, are we talking yards or miles? How big is this?
So if you were looking, some of them were like several hundred feet long, and I think there's some images there of some people standing near, like you can see part of where they're standing in like a structure there. And so let's go look Saudi Arabia. I'm going to pull up some of these other
Well, and
images
to
there.
look at this picture, it looks like they're standing next to something maybe 6, 10, 12 inches tall tops. Like, so I see what you're saying with, it doesn't make sense as animal pens or even as a demarcation of property boundaries.
Yeah, and again, as they are, and that's the thing we always have to keep in mind is that we're looking at what's left over. And there's often times where we found stuff where we're like, oh, we think this was just some sort of weird ceremonial thing, and then somebody finds the remnants of fence posts, or and they're like, oh, maybe there was a roof over this and it did something else. So let me give you some of that. There's something like 400 of the gates in the area, and there's been some are anywhere from 40 feet long to nearly 1,700 feet long. They're pretty crude. They don't look like they were using, very, I think that, 5,000-6,000 years later in some regions we had better building technique for doing straighter lines and stuff. These appear to be built by people who maybe don't have, I'm going to say, a lot of experience building things, like a lot of, inherited knowledge.
Yeah,
So-
probably because they're demons.
Well, so
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah, demons don't have protractors.
what is this area like nowadays? We saw a bunch of volcanic activity, like volcanoes and stuff around. Like is it a livable environment, or is it too hot for humans to inhabit?
I actually wrote about this region in one of my books years ago, and parts of it are just very inhospitable because you've got a lot of volcanic rock. It's very, very hot, and it's, not conducive to necessarily growing things, et cetera, not much soil, which is already kind of a problem in Saudi Arabia to begin with. So, but again, we're talking about today, 9,000 years ago. It could have been marsh. That could have been because one of the things you had 9,000 years ago, you had rising levels of water. And some of these structures, though, look like they're on like the surface of like carved into or built into like a volcano caldera, which could mean, looks like the dome. So, I mean, it's kind of curious to know like which came first. So, they talk about how where they are, they're in these very unwelcome places. But again, these were, built when, this environment was very different. So it could have been, could have been marsh, there could have been just little low level flooding, and maybe this was enough to preserve it there. Maybe they built, mud mounds around there. Who knows? There could have been mud. One of the things we found out too is let me just keep going for 1 second. Is, we've had these ruins like Mohenjo-Daro, they call it the Mound of the Dead, because they found the city covered in dirt, and like, why would they cover it? And we've had a number of these cities, like, why did they cover these cities in dirt? Well, maybe it was because back then the environment was different and the rivers overflooded and they were flooded with silt.
Sure.
And that seems to be what we found now. That's where we go, oh no, it wasn't an intentional thing. That's why they left. So.
Yeah. So mistaking cause and effect.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the biggest bummer. There's a book written by Pierce Anthony that I forgot the name of. It was in the late 60s. And one of the things they do is they fold space and time so that people get super far away from Earth. But then they do something extraordinary. They turn a telescope at Earth, and because they've gotten so far away, they're able to look back and watch the ancient Phoenicians walking around. It's I love that as a theatrical conceit in a book, but more importantly, I realize that we'll never be able to do that. We'll never be able to truly look into our past. The best we can hope for is a level of forensic science that allows us to make a guess and tell a story that's so good. Oh, it's Macroscope. That's Bryce has already found it. Yeah, Macroscope is the book. It's such a bummer to me that we can never truly look back and know for absolute certainty how our story started.
Information loss sucks. I was playing with an idea that I wanted to use for a science fiction story, and I thought it'd be kind of a neat sort of notion. The idea was quantum compression. And the idea was that, like, let's say and this is sci-fi. This is not like, hey guys, here's my brilliant idea. But I thought this would make a cool sci-fi theory, which is the idea. Like, let's say you want to have a really neat form. You wanted to like figure out like, I need to know what the a 1934 Volkswagen looked like, a Luger, and all this sort of stuff. So what I'll do is I'll start off with, the ingredients of the Big Bang as a starting point, and then figure out what will give me a picture of Hitler at the podium, doing, speaking to people. Let it create a bunch of different universes until it arrives at one where you get that image.
Oh, so you are creating, like growing the history that you assume is closest to our own.
Just create a billion different, trillions of different, histories of the universe until I get one that this pops up. And that way, all I need is that photo of Hitler and just say, and what universe just come up like, okay, now tell me what the design is for a Luger, all these other things, etc.
And then be like, all right, cool. Well, we're done. So bye.
Yeah,
collapse that universe.
Universes.
So, but to your point, Brian, what I brought that up was the idea that in a thing that has been sort of a fascination of mine is how much can we use computation to try to reconstruct? How much can we, say, okay, we know this is here and this is here, and we won't have a definitive answer, but we could say, knowing now that like, if we have a better view of the hydrological cycle of that region, knowing how other things have grown and developed, could you give us a better picture? Could you give us there's this computational archaeology, predictive archaeology, and I think we can get much, much better pictures of the past, but we will never know the exact precise past, to your point. But I think that I'm encouraged.
I guess the weird part is I don't even need to know that this is the definitive actual way it went. I just need a vivid enough explanation and depiction of it that I can scratch that mental itch and say, if not this, something like this. Now I understand where we came from and what it looked like and so on. I guess I'm looking for fine storytellers to make me feel better about how we got here.
Well, but imagine if we had a massive database of historical information that was ranked by what we think is very accurate, things that maybe were accurate or not. A lot of data about like even trying to find like coastline data from 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago is hard, but we did that. Better data about what plants were there and a lot of stuff, and then put this into the most advanced version of Sims you could think of.
Right.
And, then we could all hop into our VR and go walk through a Roman village because we said we know this much about Roman villages. We're going to make inferences that, we found just the outline of a fence in the northern region of France, but we think if there was a Roman village here, it would look like this. It would probably mean there are people that lived here near there like this, etc. It could fill in a lot of data, and create a very realistic experience. And then we could test things and say, can we find proof that there was a farm here? Can we find evidence that, there was a foundry here or other things? And you might find that, and then that sort of increases the confidence of that estimation.
Yeah, I wonder if well, I don't know. This is nothing new, but that scene from Jurassic Park where they thump the ground and they're able to see the reverberations of a raptor skeleton or whatever. It just seems like so much of our history is so improbably buried in extraordinary places that would be difficult to excavate. What are we looking at? 20, 30, 50, 100 years before we have devices that are able to just have precise enough to get the echoes of everything and draw pictures of lost civilizations?
We're actually, there's some things that are really exciting as far as doing different kinds of, different forms of radar, different forms of like, even think of like how a CAT scan works or an MRI. The idea that we might be able to build something that's a field version of that just gives off this pulse and everything responds. It's a matter of fidelity. And there's a lot of really cool stuff kind of rumored at government tech and things you could do too. Let's say we just have a bunch of little nano ants that we just say, hey guys, just crawl into the ground and make a grid.
Well, or what if, and this is the nutty part to me, is why bother with nano ants, synthetic replacements for ants? Why not genetically engineer ants that just have a compulsion to dig in these directions and report back data somehow?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think that if there's effort or whatever to do that. And I guess this is talking about this is a good segue into, want to jump into the Hyperloop thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What states announced a thingamajig?
So just a quick background, like when we talked about Hyperloop and some of this stuff, I think we're all kind of like, yeah, that's a great idea, but the world we live in, we're not going to get these nice things, you know.
And specifically there, what we're talking about is land acquisition, state and federal funding, referendums that need to be passed for it, that there's a lot of the history of cross state lines or even in state lines mass transit that is hostile to innovation and oftentimes, again, we're not able to get nice things.
So here's a headline from TechCrunch. Daryl Etherington writes, Elon Musk week is going pretty great thus far between meeting the creators of Rick and Morty and now gaining permission to dig even more tunnels. Besides one, he already got the okay to begin digging closer to home in Hawthorne. For those who don't remember, he's got permission to dig a tunnel, part of a tunnel, a test tunnel. Most of the steps of the permission, I think there's probably still some things to go to start digging in, right out near the SpaceX factory. And now his company, the Boring Company, which you can buy hats for, by the way, if you're going to go to the Boring Company website, you can get your own Boring hat. I think mine arrives in a couple days. They got permission. There's many steps here, but they got permission to the new tunnel. They got permission. Okay, let me rephrase this. The new tunnel will be a 10.3-mile route that undercuts a state-owned operation of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway in Maryland and could eventually become the anchor point for a network that would span Washington, New York, with stops in between at urban centers in Baltimore and Philadelphia, according to the LA Times. This is where it comes from. So they've got permission, and this is kind of the way that was done, which is really very interesting. Maryland Transportation Secretary Pete Ron told the LA Times the tunnel really wasn't any different from the various utility access points. So that's the way that they're able to give him permission to do this. They're saying, hey, this is kind of like a utility system, like utility digging tunnels for fiber optics, et cetera. And there are more steps to go through, but they said, like, well, they haven't got permission from everybody, but quotes are from this thing is real. It's really exciting to see. Maryland Transportation Secretary Pete Ron said, the word transformation will be overused, but this is technology that leapfrogs any technologies out here today, and it's going to be here. They asked the Baltimore mayor, they said they hadn't talked, the cities along the route hadn't necessarily granted permission, but Baltimore Mayor Catherine Fu said that she was excited to hear more, and the enthusiasm is pretty much, there.
So
all right. Well, no. Let me ask you a question then. Negative Nelly, does this make you more or less excited
about season
for the
5
possibility
of The
that
Wire?
this is a thing?
I don't know if you heard Justin, but he said more or less excited about season 5 of The Wire.
It'll be about the Hyperloop in Baltimore, Maryland.
So here's my question. The Hyperloop has always seemed to me, and we're all Elon Musk fanboys here. The Hyperloop seems like a fantastic solution to a problem that is not so universal. Is what I perceive. Is this a fantastic logistical way to move stuff? Are they moving Amazon Prime boxes? Are they moving human bodies? Like what is the pressing problem that we perceive this is going to solve?
Well, Brian, if I lived in the transportation paradise of Austin.
Oh, okay. We got some traffic here.
From the sound of your voice there, sir, I don't know. And again, like, we work at home.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I guess because all of this boils down to whether or not it makes economic sense, right? Like,
yep.
All that boils down to is like how much, what's the ticket price? How bad is the problem for hundreds of thousands of people every day going to and fro?
Well, let's just put it like how many transportation solutions have been foisted upon us that made absolutely no economic sense, but there was plenty of opportunity for ridiculous funding.
Let's put it like this. If there were no BART, would living in Oakland make sense for my wife, for example, who works in San Francisco? If she had to drive in or she had to find a carpool all the time, would it make as much sense for us to live where we live, which is across a bay? Maybe a little less. and therefore, like, if you can now spread out, I can take a job in this place and live in this other place. I think there is a tangible benefit to it, but you need to be realistic and have it like Brian said, make actual sense and not just kind of do it to do it, which is what we've seen with light rails.
In Maryland, and that's that area there, I mean, that's a great example where millions of people have to go through there every day, and there's just not enough transportation options for there, and that's a problem, and it's an impediment. There's only so many places they can put highways. There's only so much traffic or people they can move over. And they have, they have the Acela corridor, is very active. They use it. This is a thing that's fully used very heavily. And I think in certain locations in the early, I mean, we always have to qualify by talking about timeframes. 50 years from now, when money's not a problem, our concept of money, it'd be easier to say, yeah, you could build this here or there. But when these things do cost billions of dollars, pardon my, so I hit the microphone. It's a very rational, is it really worth it? But I think in some areas, maybe. I don't know. I think there's so many technical things that have to be solved, but I'm encouraged by the enthusiasm.
Well, and
it's surprising me.
So far, out of all the different arguments, when you were talking about between, I forget what the two Middle Eastern cities were to build a hyperloop in between them, when essentially it's like an alien, the surface of Venus between the two. Then I could totally see that. But man, just carving a trench through urban developed areas, I'm hopeful. We'll see.
Well, that's the whole idea of the Boring Company, was that he was like, when he realized how many problems there were going to be in trying to get surface permission to do this and how that is, and then he looked into like, okay, what about digging tunnels? And that was his, okay, well, we need to have next generation tunneling tech that like we've talked about before, like the way we used to dig tunnels was you dug a trench and then you covered it over, and that was easy. Now, because you have millions of dollars of property development, streets, things like that, you can't, interfere with. In many municipalities and places, you don't do that anymore. You got to dig straight under there, and that's ridiculously expensive.
How deep do you think they have to go to not disturb anyone? Like is there the equivalent of international waters if you go deep enough?
So just put a casino down there, like you're just serving alcohol to minors, like.
So one of the things that he talked about, and I think that Musk has pointed out, like the depth at which these things go. I think it's something like I want to say 20 feet or 30 feet or something to that effect. It says you will not notice anything on the surface at all. That the Israelis, have been trying to spend a considerable amount of money to find terrorist tunnels and things like that, because you get the amount of the energy gets just absorbed by everything around you, and so everything around. So you're not going to notice anything on the surface. It's background noise, and that was sort of his promise. Was like, if you feel our tunnel digging, if you hear us digging underneath you, our office is right in front of SpaceX. We're right. That's the site. Show up and tell us. He's very, very confident that nobody will realize what's going through there. So, of course, we love Elon,
guess it really
but Elon.
Is. If you just have if you crack the code and you just make a mole tunneling gizmo that simultaneously carves and reinforces and basically just takes dirt and leaves behind a safe, secure tunnel.
Yeah, so they have an FAQ here at the at boringcompany.com.
Yeah.
Is there disruptive surface vibration or noise during tunneling? No. Once a TBM, tunneling boring machine, is below a certain depth, approximately 2 tunnel diameters or 28 feet in this case, the tunneling process is almost impossible to detect, especially in soft soil. So they've got a bunch of Q&As there, and they talk about their plans for like moving things. They don't get into the Hyperloop here. This is just pretty much talking about just digging the tunnels to make it easier to move vehicles back and forth on the platforms, etc. So
that's crazy.
It's very, it's very interesting. People are, approaching it, but the goal they explain is that they talk about, about Gary the snail.
No. Wait, you're talking about SpongeBob's pet? Meow.
So, Bryce, if you want to go to Boring Company, go to FAQ. You can click on, let's see how we can reduce the cost of tunneling. Our goal is to defeat the snail. You'll see the snail. Elon Musk's kids have a pet snail named Gary, named for, click on there. There you go. And he lives in a pineapple, right?
Yeah.
And they explain how traditional, tunneling machines are far, far slower. A snail is 14 times faster than a traditional tunnel boring machine.
Oh,
that
wow.
snail goes 14
So their goal is to
times
beat
faster.
Gary?
Their goal is to beat Gary. The goal is to beat Gary.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So the race is on.
So I guess the idea here is then that, number one, it is more exciting for the possibility that this exists because going underground requires less permission and seemingly, based on these moves, are more attractive to local governments. And now the question is, not the question, but the possibility that this will exist is more likely.
Yeah, I think we'll see. And just to address a couple things in the comments. Somebody says, if you own the land, you own it all the way down. It depends upon where you live. And this varies state by state, county by county, city by city. That's not the case, in many, many situations.
Well, and we already have established that it's not the case for the air above you. I mean, commercial airlines don't need your permission to fly over, quote unquote, your airspace. I would imagine that a similar set of laws would be enacted for the area below you.
Yeah, mineral rights, et cetera. Like when they dug the latest extension of the LA subway, you did not have to clear for parts of that went under, if it went well enough underneath there. So it's highly variable. Question was, why are we more skeptical of this than the Big Falcon rocket?
Mainly because tunneling is it's a fairly known. Actually, I don't know. Let me put it this way. This is probably 100% inaccurate, but my gut says because we've seen so many fraud busts in public transportation.
Monorail, The Simpsons.
Yeah, exactly, right? We have a long and storied history of public-funded projects that involve underground tunneling and public transportation that have been garbage and have screwed over the taxpayer. This is not a theoretical way to get boondoggled and hornswoggled. We have a long and storied history, so it smells like the Hialeah of public transportation, and that's not, it's not Hialeah's fault, but that's what it smells like.
So. I think that the problem comes into it's to build a Big Falcon rocket, you need a guy with a bunch of money and you need a company that can build rockets. Turns out Elon Musk has both. So his chances of building that, all these have technical limitations, but after they landed a rocket booster, and after they started testing the Raptor engine, the three big technical hurdles there for me were, one, can you land a rocket back? They did that. Second one, can you build, a large scale methane powered engine? Done that. The next step is, can you build your big cryo tanks, your composite composite tanks, which stopped the development in the 1990s of trying to build the National Space Plane because we couldn't build composite materials that were that strong back then. Now we can. So those big three technical hurdles for me are like, well, it's a matter of finance. So. Boring company, Hyperloop, it's a matter of there's a working Hyperloop on SpaceX property. It's a mile long, and it's, for ants. They built it. But trying to build one on a large scale is not up to just their prowess or the prowess of the companies involved. It's a lot of people. Got to say yes. So
yeah, I think that's ultimately the problem is that it oddly, and here's the problem. Is that it's easier to get to Mars than it is to get from DC to New York in under 30 minutes, right?
I watched
this will happen.
Mike Pence had Vice President Pence had the meeting of the National Space Council a couple weeks ago, and he had the heads from different agencies there, including the Office of Budget Management, transportation, et cetera, all that. And they had Blue Origin, they had SpaceX, and some other companies. There's Sierra Nevada. They're talking about what they're trying to do for space. And they're all like, Let us know what we can do to streamline. Know us what red tape we can cut. Let us know what we can do to make this thing happen. Because at that federal level there, they're very eager to increase, they look at space and commerce and all this, and they're super enthusiastic about that. And so when you have an environment where they're like, hey, tell us what you need. Here's my number. Just call me. We can fix that. That's great. When you're trying to build a long distance tunnel that's got to go through counties, cities, states, and everybody wants their little piece of it, and the environmental hazards, et cetera, it's challenging.
Hey, you teased a certain, was it a Bigfoot story?
So first, speaking of teasing.
Yeah. Hey, how about we tease you with the fact that you can tease your money into our hands by going to the teasing website of patreon.com/weirdthings. That's where we go ahead and get the cash to do this podcast each and every week for you. Head on over there right now. Hey, Bryce, what do you get if you become a patron?
Well, you get early access to our sister show After Things, which is all about being a creative professional, and you get that in its own RSS feed. So if you like listening to this podcast, you can get After Things early, right where you're already listening to the show.
Yeah, man, and not for nothing, but there are some that will tell you right to your face that After Things is the real gem of the stuff that we do every Monday.
So I want to before we go into the Bigfoot story, I want to talk about another really exciting thing that happened in space, and that's Blue Origin. They successfully test fired their BE-4 engine. Okay, the BE-4 is a massively powerful engine. I'm trying to find the specs on it, but it's probably one of the most powerful engines since probably some of the Saturn, what powered the Saturn V's. Okay, it is very, very exciting because it's methane. It uses methane, which means it's highly reusable. It's designed for reusability. This is what Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' company, wants to power their New Glenn rocket. It's also ULA is talking to them about using it to power their next generation rocket, the Vulcan rocket. This thing is a beast. It's an absolute beast. And in the race for space, it's in a huge development because what Blue Origin says, hey, yeah, we're going to make this available to other companies because right now we have a problem. Most of our rocket engines kind of come from Russia. And I don't know if you've heard the news on that. It's, it depends, where, the political climate is, but sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. At the moment, it's a bad thing. And they want to use it for, again, the New Glenn, possibly for the Vulcan, and also Boeing is designing the DARPA XS-1, a reusable space plane, and there's talk about the idea that this could have been a possibility for there, but actually I think the contract went to Aerojet Rocketdyne, but this has applications for other people, so other people will be able to buy this.
So, this and forgive me for making it all about the race to space 3.0, but is this going to be enough that their New Glenn rocket will be able to go to orbit, or are they still in suborbital land?
This is for orbit. So this is going to go for orbital. And so New Glenn will be orbital. So that's the plan. This is a much more powerful rocket. Totally. This is an orbital class engine.
But it's still one stage to orbit.
No, New Glenn is going to be 2-stage, and the second stage will have a single BE-4, and it'll be what's called like a vacuum formation, which means a longer nozzle because you've got to have because it's a vacuum essentially, and so for your combustion and your power to work, you have to do that. Now, there is so far the New Glenn, the upper stage is not going to be reusable, and that's the one of the things. The New Glenn will have two stages to it, upper, lower. Lower, they're looking to do full reusability like SpaceX. Upper stage does not look at this point like it'll be reusable, and there's a challenge because if it's powered by this engine and it's got the vacuum, the bell, the larger nozzle for that, it'll be tricky to try to figure out how to reuse that unless they come up with some other radical thing. I'm not in the position anymore of saying, you can't do this. And then somebody figures out a way to do it.
That's great, though. One of the things that we've been really, I think, fairly consistent on is that more competitors is nothing but great news in the space race.
Absolutely, and that's why I wanted to make a point. This is great. This is a super powerful engine. This is an exciting thing, and it's just a stepping stone. But it's technically speaking, we haven't had engines like this between the Merlin and now the Raptor engines and now the BE-4 engines and the BE-3, which came before. these are the most modern engines that we haven't really created engines in 40, 50, 40 years here since the shuttle engines. The SLS rocket, the SLS program, which, by the way, side note, the SLS is going to use literally leftover shuttle engines. Literally, we found some shuttle engines in a warehouse, and we're going to use that for this. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's where that is. And they had
Vintage.
Congress asked NASA to say, hey, what are the estimated costs for the next mission after you want to do the manned test of the SLS? And NASA's like, we don't have an estimate. It was like, we weren't mandated to come up with one, so we don't have one. Can't tell you. It'd be ongoing costs.
That sounds a little rough.
Tell you what, if they don't list the price, it's going to be pretty expensive. That's a lesson I've learned in life.
And what's going to happen is that the SLS program, they're going to try to, test this and launch Crew eventually at a point and do the first, maybe do a deep space mission with the craft on there. But the challenge is going to be around the time they're going to maybe say, hey, we want a lot more funding for this thing, or the contractors want that. I was thinking about big milestones, like next, maybe December, maybe January, Falcon Heavy launch, hopefully. Okay. Summer, scheduled for summer, Crew Dragon, actual NASA astronauts on a Dragon spacecraft, on a Falcon 9 rocket in a Dragon spacecraft. A couple months later, maybe Boeing's going to launch one of theirs it'll be on top of, I think, like an Atlas or a Delta. I forget which one's the human-rated one. Okay, so you're going to get that. And then if SpaceX is moving along with the development of the BFR, watching the BFR test stand, watching the test rockets at that point, imagine the point at which we see this thing launch. Imagine when they have these things, a couple of these things, watching these things do that butt-to-butt thing to refuel. It's and then New Glenn, New Glenn is sort of kind of looked upon like, well, they're way behind SpaceX. Yeah, but they're way ahead of everybody else. So.
All right. Can you stop hiding from the truth and give us the truth about this Sasquatch story?
Yeah.
So, listen, guys, I don't know what your personal connection is to Bigfoot, but I'm a little bit worried. And I'm a little bit worried for my friend Justin here. The legendary Bigfoot and others like it have reportedly been spotted near a Northern California lake, which sounds like I think we need to have an investigative trip by Justin and Ashley.
My God.
Jeffrey
my
Gonzalez, a self-described paranormal expert, said he heard it from a local farmer who saw the creature and 4 or 5 others running on his ranch near Avocado Lake. One of them, which was extremely tall, had a pig over its shoulder, he said, and the 5 scattered, and the one of the pig was running so fast it didn't see an irrigation pipe, and it tripped, with the pig flying over.
No.
According to his Facebook page, Gonzalez talks to host and investigator at Paranormal Central, in addition to being a technician at AT&T. So he also founded the Sanger Paranormal Society. So we've got since sightings aren't that uncommon, sightings the past 5 years, East Fresno County.
All right,
So-
no, hold on. I have felt like I don't know that I've ever seen it flatly stated, but I assume part of all the good PR for Sasquatch is that he's not a predator eating our livestock.
Well, Brian, times are tough.
Hey,
I mean-
by the way, I've done some preliminary research here on Avocado Lake. Almost exactly equidistant driving directions between Burbank and Oakland. Both 3 hours, 20 minutes.
I'm in. If you're saying a meetup, I'm in.
I'm saying it's almost exactly the same.
So what's your point? Your point is we should both go there and meet up.
Yeah.
100%.
So
Avocado Lake. And by the way, that's close to where a friend of the show, Brett Rounsaville, was raised.
Can we get
That
back to
explains
the
a lot. No.
Can we get back to the ethical and marketing implications of what happens once it becomes clear that Sasquatch is a predator? If there's a bigger than man-sized beast with clever hands and murder of in his heart, that changes the picture of Bigfoot. Like, it's never occurred to me that we need a Bigfoot defense perimeter until now.
Well, I'm saying you're a little bit biased here. So, what do you think
Yeah.
Bigfoot was surviving on in the forest?
Same thing. Gorillas.
Sorry, Brian. Your privilege is showing. We can't just go hunting down Bigfoot because you heard a rumor.
I had assumed that much like gorillas that largely survive on fruits and nuts in the occasional omnivorous situation, I figured that was the situation with Bigfoot. But if he's running around with a pig over his shoulder, the dude's a menace. He's a menace.
You know, it's weird because here you disparage Bigfoot so much. Yet I'm looking at your beard, and you're kind of like
Yes,
you're
I'm a
trying to co-opt
self-loathing,
Bigfoot culture a bit.
I may identify a little bit Bigfooty. I'm not gonna lie. It's yeah.
So apparently,
Listeners, we have now
gorilla.
done a hard zoom into the thicket that is Brian Brushwood's
Yeah.
beard. By the way, everybody follow @Schwood for the public dialogue that Brian is currently having. Is
Hashtag join the conversation.
like any kind of public works project, he is now soliciting public comment on the future of the beard.
Belongs to all of us, especially to Bigfoot. I don't want Bigfoot. I don't like the idea of Bigfoot eating meat. I don't like it. I'm against it.
Wow. What do you eat, Brian? Yeah, how's that vegan
look,
diet
look,
working?
it's not wrong for me to want something better than I am for Bigfoot.
Well, better. Okay. I mean, so
Superior.
he's morally less than you if he eats meat?
No, he's unfortunately morally equal to, and I want him to
he's
be
equal.
better
So he's
than me.
equal. Oh, okay.
I want him to be enlightened. I want him to be thoughtful and kind and patient and write thank you notes and send them in the actual mail, not an
Two
email,
things.
not a text, not a thumbs up on your
Two
Facebook
things,
page.
Brian. One. So now you're saying Bigfoot isn't as enlightened as you because you know better than what Bigfoot does.
For shame.
Two. I'm going to throw this out there.
Yeah.
Was this pig a farm pig? It looked like it was a pig. It's not a hog. It was a pig. Was Bigfoot maybe rescuing him from the dinner table?
No.
Prairie lifestyle.
Well, now we get into the awkward question of whether he's stealing property or liberating a life.
Would you save a pig to feed your family, Brian?
I mean, you're not wrong. I'm just saying.
Was he liberating the pig? Is Bigfoot an animal rights activist who is taking direct action?
That seems fairly unlikely, right?
Whoa, the patriarchy, the hominidarchy here is really, really kind of, annoying. It's just
I rescind my protest and I check my
watch as
privilege.
Brian human-splains this.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I leave it. Hit us up on Twitter. Tell us if you're okay with the idea of him being a.
Or the show email. We have an email for the show. You can email. neshcom@gmail.com. Put weird things in the subject line.
Yeah.
So, listen, gentlemen. Oh, what time is it?
Oh, wait. Might it indeed be time for Journey Quest?
If any of the people who are getting texts got their text, just scratch your nose.
Wait, got what?
All right. Oh, yes. Hold on. Let me go ahead and
Paying
send that.
attention says what?
Oh, sorry. I got. No, I don't have any texts.
You're good. It's fine.
Okay,
It's fine.
great. I'm not just good. I'm the best. Let's see that
Might be
recap.
Bryce. Who knows?
Previously on
Journey Quest!
Have you ever wondered what exists beyond the borders of this town?
But the foolish Brian that came to town and rejected what was obviously God's path for him.
And there is a letter, last will and testament of Brian the First.
So I think I decided to help defend the town, right?
Yeah, I totally forgot we're at that point. You totally decided to help protect the town. So Brian came across this Wild West town run by, what was it, a 9-year-old mayor?
9-year-old mayor, yep.
And you have agreed to protect the town from the marauders.
Yeah.
May or may not show up. I mean, it definitely seems like you got conscripted by a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think your first step right now, Brian, is you want to maybe start to protect the town. Like, it's kind of wide open, looks like something out of a Hollywood backlot. Maybe
yeah.
you want to.
What are my resources? Is my army of monkeys still on my side, or are they totally driven?
Yeah,
to
they're
distraction?
getting kind of friendly with the locals, though. I'm just saying, though. They love that swing set. They've been hanging around the kindergarten.
Okay, all right.
and-
So I clap my one good hand to my chest, like, hey.
Oh wait, they're working the pump to do the slip and slide.
All right. I say, hey, gather around. Meeting, and then I rev my my chainsaw hand. Get on over here.
And now they all scattered because they're afraid if they watch you decapitate their
Okay,
friends.
all right. Wait, I apologize loudly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start it. I know you. Come on. Whoo, 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 whoo. I hope I'm not making fun of them. But I asked for some bananas to attract all of my monkeys.
They're like, we're apes, Brian. We're
Okay.
apes. They
Okay.
signed you. We're apes, Brian, not monkeys.
Okay, that's fine. I say, great. I say, listen up. Ape, you're apes. I'm apes. We're all apes. Guess what? We're about to be under attack. Focus. Look at me. All the bananas are about to be taken away. All of your go-karts are about to be taken away. The only way, we got to dig tunnels and trenches. We got to dig trenches and get ready for an attack. A bunch of you guys dig holes and lay down things over you so that you can pop up and surprise the enemy when they come in. A bunch of you guys dig a big old trench filled with gasoline and fire ants. And a couple of you start writing a song about the epic last stand we're about to have.
Well, Brian, the most intelligent apes, signs to you, what do you think we are, the Army Corps of Engineers? We're chimpanzees.
I grin and close my eyes and nod approvingly of like, I believe in you. Dig a trench, bro.
And they start flinging poo.
Okay. I go to the 9-year-old mayor and I say, hey, you don't happen to have an Army Corps of Engineers or anyone who can do anything to help fortify? Because look, you're not giving me much to work with here, sir.
Yeah, you have the town people. He tells you we have the town people.
All right. I turn to the town people. I say, all of you take a monkey to use as manual labor.
They're apes, sir. These are apes. Monkeys,
Apes.
generally speaking, have tails. There's a clear delineation, too.
I'm just
if you look at both the hands and the feet, you'll notice, and there are some different teeth structures.
Swear to God. I say, you know what? I'm going to take a moment to commune with my gods. And I walk outside of the town and by the way,
You're followed by all of your chimpanzees, by the way.
All right. I turn around and I give them a shooing motion, and I say, "Give me a moment
They
to
all
figure
start
this
shooting
out."
each other because it's fun to do.
All right, so I try to figure out if there's any way for me to get word to Justin, because clearly I am not capable of handling
This is
this
already
on
my favorite silent film of all time.
Do I have any inkling where Justin is? I know we both landed in the same jungle.
Was that a windstorm blowing through town? Is there some dust?
I look to the dust and I try to ascertain if it's an entire mob of enemies approaching.
You hear cling, 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 cling. Like a Lee Van Cleef kind of, walking through a town.
I walk up to Chimpanzee 278. I say, 278, check it out. Find out what's in that dust cloud.
278 runs into the dust cloud and doesn't come back.
I look to 279 and I gesture kind of a half shrug, but also I'm doing this scales balancing move to indicate like, hey, you understand the difficult situation I'm in. I can't just not know what's in that cloud. And then I raise my eyebrows expectantly at 279, hoping he gets the gist without me having to insist it out loud.
Yeah, man, we all remember that great scene in Patton when strong leadership was needed, and he just lifted both hands as if to say, "I don't know." And then there's a lot of merit on the both sides of this argument. Why don't you make a call?
I'm glad you picked up what I'm putting down. I sort of gesture, jerking my head to the left, like, huh?
So 279 does this.
He looks at me.
He raises an eyebrow.
He gives you the big rock eyebrow for all of our audio
all right,
listeners.
I pull out 2 bananas. I hand one in front of him, but then when he reaches for it, I kind of jerk it back, look at him expectantly to see if he's going to nod and understands that he only gets the other banana if he goes in.
And he tries to bite off your hand, but it's the chainsaw hand, and his teeth hurt, and he whimpers.
Yeah, and then I say, see, you brought this on yourself. Go look inside there. Come back. Right. 2 bananas for you.
He goes into the dust cloud. He's gone. Cling, cling, cling. It's getting closer, Brian. Cling,
I say, everybody
cling.
hide! Get up in the attics! Everybody hide!
Everybody starts to run and hide. The chimpanzees are still on the slip and slide.
I say, last warning, 172, 458. I swear, don't you test me. You hide or you're going to get eaten by the dust cloud.
Somehow, without even verbal skills, it's able to out-bargain you like I've listened to your children do.
Too good. Too right. 5 minutes. Yeah. I'm like, go.
You're like, all right, just go put the slip and slide inside of the saloon. That's okay. All right.
Yeah. We drag the slip and slide in. I'm just hide, and then I take refuge up in like a church steeple or something, and
all right.
peek out.
Cloud of dust moves through town. Cling, 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 cling. It's the middle of the street, right below the church steeple.
I look for a crucifix and I throw it out in at where the sound is coming from. Just in case it's a vampire.
And you hear, ow, in Justin's voice. And the cloud starts to fade away. And there, Justin, dressed in Wild West gear, appears to be standing right before you, holding the hands of 2 chimpanzees.
I say, Justin, you're not no Dracula, are you?
Oh, my God. Brian. What the hell? Did you throw this crucifix at me?
Look me. I hold up my one good pinky and I say, pinky swear, you're not a Dracula. You're not no Draculas.
Yes, Brian, I'm not a Dracula, and I give you the pinky swear salute.
All right.
Now, you quickly reconnect, and Justin explains about after he left some crazy shopping mall filled with homicidal children, he ran into a jungle. Last thing he remembers was a blow dart hitting him in the neck. Waking up in this cabin at the edge of the jungle where he found the Wild West gear and decided that he was going to trek and try to find his buddy Brian.
Hey, listen up, Justin. I know it's messed up, but I've got what appears to be, for the moment, an army of chimpanzees and a town that's about to be under attack. They weren't entirely
One of the
clear.
chimpanzees is already on Justin's back with like his best buddies. The other ones are rolling around at his feet. You know, they can't get enough of them. Just
I take a moment to explain. You got to remember, chimpanzees are fickle. They're fickle, and they go to whatever's shiny and new. It's not an indication of quality.
And the chimpanzees run over, grab chairs, and sit down quietly.
I say, listen, they're doing this now, but they're gonna turn on you. They don't know what.
Another one runs up to him, hands him a sandwich.
I'm eating the sandwich as I delicately dab the corners of my mouth to make sure that nothing gets on my vintage Wild West gear. So, Brian, what's the deal? Why are you even here? What do you mean people are attacking? Like we're supposed to be
the sound
on
of
the
a cold
move.
beer being handed to you by a chimpanzee. Sorry.
I say, look, listen up. You've watched The Magnificent Seven. You've seen Three Amigos. You've read Wolves of the Cala by Stephen King, the most underrated of the entire Dark Tower series. This is a town that needs some outsiders to protect them.
All right. Well, here, hold on. Maybe something can be worked out. Who brought you in on this whole thing?
I call out, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
So the mayor comes out and hey, what are you guys? Who's this, Brian?
This is my partner in crime, so to speak, not actual crime. I know we're in the lawless west of an alternate dimension, but we're not actually criminals. This is my partner in crime, Justin Robert Young. I don't make a move without him, and I certainly make sure we always agree before doing anything rash or imprudent.
So let me get this straight, Mr. Mayor. Brian came in here, and you told him that there were marauders, and he had to defend the town. Yeah, that's what I said. Justin pulls out a gun and shoots the 9-year-old mayor in the head.
I just freeze
Boom.
aghast.
Problem solved. I don't know why it took you so long to do that. That was way easy. Easy button.
Ding, ding. Somebody's ringing the bell in the town, and you hear a voice saying, "Stagecoach is coming! Stagecoach is coming!"
I turned and beside myself mentioned you literally just shot the messenger.
No. The problem was you couldn't move because the town was under attack. Consider this your indulgence, my lord. We're free to go. We can do whatever we want. We can just leave. We can deal with these people if we want. We can leave if we want. Totally up to hey, the world's our oyster, bro. Come on.
Gesture to the clearly ringing bell warning of an impending attack, and I just sort of...
No, just a stagecoach, Brian. Just a stagecoach. Attack sounds totally different. That would be 4 ringing bells in a row.
Oh, my eyebrows lift up so
number
high.
1, I need chimpanzees 150 through 170. Let's go ahead and get that corpse out of here. That's bad for business. We need to just bring on in the stagecoach. We'll give them a good old welcome wagon. I need a 183 to 187. You guys do your little dance routine that welcomes everybody into the town. Hey, Brian, do me a favor. Just give me a real quick dab, a napkin on your chest there. There's some child blood on it.
Unbelieving, I clean off the child blood and lean over to Justin saying, "Oh, I figured we were just going to move on to the next. You're saying we just stay here and become the mayors?"
Let's just see what's up with this stagecoach. The stagecoach pulls up, and I say, "Howdy, strangers! Welcome to the town."
I inject myself unnecessarily, like, "Yeah, howdy," hoping to stay relevant in the conversation.
So 2 men in silken livery are driving the stagecoach, and they just face forward. They don't say anything to you, nothing to you, okay? It's a golden stagecoach. The door opens up. Creak. The silken curtains start to bellow in the wind. A little red carpet starts to roll out, and a man steps forward wearing what we would call kind of almost like medieval level finery, but just covered in jewels, has a big emblem there, his big puffy sort of hat, and he's holding a scroll.
Not sure what the name of the town is. I say, "Well, welcome to our town, which I assume you came here on purpose for."
This is indeed, sir. I bring you a message.
From whom?
The Golden Emperor.
The Golden
Nice.
Emperor.
Awesome.
Yes, he
That's
hands
great.
you the scroll, says, "These are the terms of which you must surrender or be destroyed. Have a good day."
I take a look at the terms.
Nice monkeys. Gets back into the stagecoach.
Hey, wait, hold on, wait. Golden Emperor messenger. Can you just 2 seconds? I just want to just review this real quick, make sure that we're still in compliance.
Hold on. He's rolling down the window. Creak, creak, creak. Hey, sand gets caught in here. It takes me a moment.
Sure. Just do me a favor. Can you just lean in? I come up right to the edge of the of the stagecoach, and
pulls apart the silken curtain, and you hear there's like a blast of air conditioning coming from there, which is kind of weird. And you hear like the sound of a TV in there too, and a mini bar. Yes.
I'm just trying to check in here because I'm kind of confused by this clause on why you would be dumb enough to open your window. Pa! And I shoot him right in the face.
Blood starts to gurgle out of his neck where he got shot. The men on top.
I turned to Justin. Can you kill those real quick, or else? I mean, I can kill them too if you want. But just if you want to kill them, we can just kill them real quick.
Looking for weapons right now.
I rev up I begrudgingly, with an eye-rolling, snarky scoff, I start up my chainsaw and slaughter all of the Herald's men.
Well, you actually want to do that, but by the time that you've actually revved up your chainsaw, I've done a cartwheel and I've shot both of them in the head. And I'm like, "Hey, man, don't worry. It's totally fine. I can do it quicker. It's totally cool. 3 down. Hey, great news. Free Golden Stagecoach. What? This is the best day ever. We got a town. We got a stagecoach. World's our oyster, baby.
I explained that we're gonna have a serious talking to after we go mudding in this sweet, sweet stagecoach. Let's get this out of our system real fast. I whip the horses and I say, to that mud over there, and I kick them into first gear and spin them around, kicking up lots of mud.
This is
And
the
then
best
horses
day ever,
start
right?
heading out of town back towards the way they came from.
Yeah. I say, knock it off. Turn around. Go back to our place.
They go faster.
All right.
Oh, this is great. They're probably bringing us back to the Golden Emperor.
You know what? Why not? Let's go meet this Golden Emperor face to face. And when we show up, real quick, are there any corpses that we could steal all their clothes to disguise ourselves as?
You forgot to take the bodies off of the stagecoach.
Okay, well, in that case, I get in the back, I open up the minibar, I start watching TV, and I decide it's up to new mayor Justin.
No,
Okay.
we're not really mayors. We just, I mean, you seem to have a problem with that 9-year-old kid bossing you around and telling you what to do
You
and
straight
everything.
up murdered the leader of the town and assumed leadership of the town.
No, I didn't assume leadership. I welcomed in a stagecoach, which we're in, by the way. You're welcome.
I look and try to figure out what's the hardest alcohol they have in this minibar.
Next time on Journey Quest.
Man,
Where is the stagecoach heading?
to the Golden Emperor, I hope.
Maybe. Gentlemen, do you have any picks?
I sure do. Hot damn, I did not expect to feel so passionate about this. But while I was out of town at Disney, I don't know if I've told you this, Andrew. I enjoyed the ever-loving hell out of The Naturalist. I think it's your best work. I think it's your most approachable, your most human work. Not that you're not human, but I think that
Right. That'd be weird.
I think that I adore the characters. And it's great. The Naturalist is wonderful. And to put in perspective how much I enjoyed it, as I got to the end, I joked to the kids that it's a real roller coaster of an ending. I might just listen to it while I'm on Space Mountain. And then the kids laughed. And then they laughed. And then we got on to the ride of Space Mountain. And I realized I would rather listen to the rest of The Naturalist than whatever the sound effects were on Space Mountain. So I listened to the roller coaster ending of The Naturalist while on an actual roller coaster, much to my children's chagrin.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. I have it's a lot of fun writing that book, and the next one comes out in March. Looking Glass, and working on making sure that I can keep Theo Cray stories coming. So that's it's all I have to say about that.
It was great, and it took zero time to get its hooks into me. Like, I would say I listened to the first 5 to 15 minutes, and I realized, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing with every free minute for the next week. It was great.
Cool. Thank you, man. That means a lot to me. I'm glad you like it. It'd be really awkward if you didn't. Justin?
So on my flight down to Southern California, I took advantage of the United
The
movie.
flight attendant.
Whoa.
What was that?
Nothing. That's good. Thought it was a confessional. I thought in the light of everything going on right now that you're just trying to jump ahead and just, stop some sort of scandal from erupting without you being at the head of it. I said you took advantage of the flight attendant.
Oh God, let's
Jesus.
Moving right along with the rest of
all
the
right, so I
recommendation.
watched Doctor Strange, and I really like it still, and I'm excited.
Not as
for,
interesting as the other way we were going, but go ahead.
I went to I got tickets for Thor Ragnarok, and I after all the really great reviews for that, I decided to watch Doctor Strange. And you want to know what? It's one of those I really appreciated a lot of the nuances in that story, including how well they set up. I love that initial initial 15-minute or the opening action sequence, because in a lot of modern science fiction, I don't think there's a lot of time and effort put into explaining kind of the rules. And I really just kind of appreciated that in this opening sequence, you just get a lot of okay, this is what magic looks like. This is what creating this kind of like magical barrier looks like. This is, somebody has to like stop and do a thing to make a portal happen, and that's going to factor into some of the action set pieces later. And so much science fiction and can kind of just be fantasy, and not to say this isn't science fantasy, but like it so much matters to establish some kind of rule set that you're going to stick by. And Doctor Strange doesn't necessarily, the point of Doctor Strange isn't that necessarily, but I love that they took the time to do it, and I really appreciated it, and I appreciated it again when I watched it 2 days ago.
Yeah, it really, really holds up, and part of that is just because of the utterly eye-pleasing visuals are so good, but also the consistency of the universe and also the characters.
Yeah,
it was such a delight because that was a movie that I was expecting I wanted it to be good, but I was fearful it was not, and it just way exceeded my expectations. And I would say, and I offer that as proof of like, it's a movie that I walked into prepared to not like it, prepared to be like, they didn't do this right or didn't do this wrong, everything like this, and it delighted me. Like Wonder Woman, these movies were ones that just not that I had low expectations. I just heard stories and stuff that I'm like, oh, I'll see this. I'm like, no, this is great, and I'm glad I was so wrong. And it just the way they used magic, the way the visuals served the story, and not just, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? That was wonderful. Yeah. My pick is I've talked about this before, the show Red Dwarf, which was a British show started back in like 1988. If you're a fan of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's a really fun, quirky kind of show about this man named Lister, who is the last human alive because he was on a spacecraft and he got in trouble for bringing a cat on board, this big, huge mining ship, the Red Dwarf, and he got put in the stasis booth. Meanwhile, his coworker, Rimmer, forgot to seal down a drive plate. There was a radiation leak and killed everybody on board the spacecraft. So the AI in charge of it put it on a path out of the solar system and waited until the ship was decontaminated to let Lister back out of the stasis booth, which just happened to be 3 million years later. So humanity's gone. His only companions are his former coworker, who's been brought back as a hologram, and then the cat that he brought on board had kitties, and it had kitties, and they had kitties, and they evolved into like humanoid cat people, and the last one of them is a guy called Cat who likes to dress very fashionably. And it's basically a very compact sort of story in the characters. Sometimes they have the AI on the ship called Holly. Sometimes it's a guy, sometimes it's a girl. And a later season they got Crichton, which was their mechanical manservant. And it's a fun show if you're into that kind of thing. Started in 1988, and then it went off the air after a few years. Then it came back, and then it went away, and then it came back again on the British network Dave. And so here we are. Started in 1988. Now we're at season 12, and they've got some new episodes up. They've had 2 episodes so far this season, and I think they're great. I went back and I watched the entire series all the way through again. And I love where the series is right now. And you get lines like, is it because I'm Hitler?
Yeah.
Meaning, that perhaps we see Hitler brought back and somebody doesn't want to be friends with Hitler. And he's like, is it because I am Hitler? And it's just, when you see that, it's a very, very funny, a lot of great stuff in there. So I was very, very thrilled. So that if you have the BritBox, which is a subscription available on like Amazon Prime and other services, you get access to all the Red Dwarf episodes, a ton of British content, whatever. So check it out.
Awesome.
They tried to make an American version of Red Dwarf, and it didn't quite work, but they tried. So anyhow, it's my pick.
Yeah.
It's been weird.
Cool.
All right,
yeah, we'll
sure
take a little
nobody's
break.
setting fire to the world.
Okay.
All right, do we have time for me to like 10 minutes to return a call?
Sure.
Yeah. Go for it.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Yo, what up?
What's good?
Yo, what's good, fam?
It's lit.
How you doing, Bryce? How was your weekend?
My weekend was pretty good. It was kind of a lazy weekend for me. This is not interesting to most people at all, but this forum that I go to a lot, and it's how I find out about news and stuff and talk about games and things, shut down over.
Oh no!
No,
That's traumatic. What board was it?
It was NeoGAF, which is like half gaming, half off-topic stuff. And
I saw a bunch of people talking about it, but I had no idea what the hot ham water everybody was talking about.
yeah, and I there are articles and stuff that are still coming out, but basically the site's administrator had been accused of some stuff, and he was starting to shut down threads, lock threads, ban people, all the while not, he kept saying, "Oh, I'll put out a statement. I'll put out a statement." Blah, blah, blah. And in fact, only now, like within the past 20 or 30 minutes, did an article come out where he commented there about what's going on, and it's not a great look. And it's one of those, and outside of like the actual news of it, because that's not even my place to discuss. Like I spent a lot of time there, and I found out about stuff and kept up with news and talked with people and got to hear other people's reactions to things, and it's one of those things where it's just like that's a lot of time I spent a week, and now I don't know what's gonna replace it.
It's a fascinating thing. Whenever anything that people do every day goes away, it's hard. It's something that I don't say traumatic in any way other than the most kind of visceral sense, because we are creatures of habit. We like patterns. We like things that we do every day, and when we don't have it, either unconsciously or consciously, it weirds us the hell out.
Yeah.
And so when something that, yes, logically you can say, well, I could probably go to this other thing and I could read other places, or a bunch of people are probably going to all go to another board and I'd probably be able to talk to a bunch, but we don't like it. Our brains are just like,
yeah.
Sorry, it's not the pattern. Stop it.
And it was really tough. Like I was watching it as like slowly the people on the board were recognizing, okay, there's a chance that this whole thing just goes to hell, and people were putting up all sorts of joke threads because it seemed like, oh, this might be the end. And I ended up jumping into a couple of Discord servers of different people from different community threads who wanted to stay in touch. But all of those servers got overloaded, or just, had a huge influx of people. And there was a lot of spamming going on from all sorts of different types of trolls. And I really like Discord, and it's actually been kind of a neat way of moving those conversations. But I don't know. It's the article that just came out was like, yeah, the site will be up, we'll be back up and working tonight. But it's like, all of your moderation staff left, so I don't know really what you do after this. So,
what did I walk into? This sounds interesting.
This is the end of it. I don't want to rehash it. But
his hometown burned down, and he can never go home again. All the firefighters left.
That's actually a pretty succinct analogy. No, this is a website that I went to shut down.
That you want
not
to
a
shut
website,
down?
a forum. So, a big popular
shut
forum
down.
went down, and because of leadership issues, apparently, and now like the trauma of it being down has kind of scattered a lot of the people that made it what it was.
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird thing. That was most of my weekend, just kind of like watching that from afar and trying to see what all of that time I spent a week would go to now.
Oh, wait. You're talking about NeoGAF.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know NeoGAF crumbled. I guess.
Yeah, it was right over the weekend.
Wow.
It was pretty much...
I did see that Lotax put a sticky post at the top of Something Awful saying, if
Don't
you're
come
here, if you're coming here because NeoGAF is gone, don't.
Yeah. Waypoint too. Like Waypoint got like thousands of new users over the weekend, and they had to make threads that was like, hey, this is not NeoGAF, and we don't even do the same sorts of things that y'all would have talked about. So like, lurk more and figure it out before you start trouble. So I don't know. And then I'm sure that there's just a ton of people who like never even, I don't know, only went to NeoGAF to talk about gaming stuff, and will probably just go back when the site goes up because they either weren't aware of all of this or don't care, which I think is just going to splinter that group of people even more. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and then you have the NeoGAF. Yeah, okay, yeah.
The NeoGAF.
Oh wow, I'm just reading some of the breakdown on this.
You know what? When I was in 6th grade, we had to memorize the list of prepositions, and I realized that I could remember them if I put them to the tune of the facts of life. So that's why I still, to this day, remember the first, the A's of the preposition list. About, above, across, after, against, along, among, around, at, at.
Raise your hand if you were actually Wikipediaing Kim Fields, Tootie from Facts of Life last night.
Well, right on.
Hand,
by the
my
way,
friend.
do you know what Mindy Cohn from Facts of Life does to this day?
No.
She is the voice of Velma on Scooby-Doo.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was if you're during that period of time. That show, Silver Spoons,
Yep.
pretty cool. Pretty rad.
Apparently, I was listening to an interview that Method Man from the Wu-Tang Clan, a huge Silver Spoons fan.
For reals?
Yeah, apparently he wanted that mansion. In
I mean,
Silver.
dude, I just
It was an
wanted Aaron
awesome
Gray.
mansion.
Although he also said that it was not the best mansion of all time. That would belong to the Addams family. That the Addams family had a better mansion than Silver Spoons.
True that. But if you were Rick hanging out in that mansion with the train that went through all the mysterious rooms, you knew they were there in the arcade games. Who was your best? You had a couple of best friends, and one of them, Jason Bateman.
Yep. The other one, the guy who breakdancer dude from
Alfonso
Fresh Prince.
Ribeiro.
What's that?
Alfonso Ribeiro was on the show too.
Yep. Now hosting America's Funniest Home Videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep being surprised that show's still around. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because it's very like
It's
fail
forever.
videos,
There
yeah.
will always be a place.
It's huge.
So
Now
in
it's
YouTube-
very YouTube centric.
Yeah, well, in YouTube, I don't know if you've ever looked at this. In the monetization stuff, they have categories for all these different use cases in YouTube. You know, it's like track everywhere, monetize everywhere, track everywhere except Japan, track only in Japan because Japan has their own stuff.
Yeah.
And one of them just says AFV.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's great.
So they must have their own monetization policy because I mean it makes sense. All these things have to have originated on YouTube.
Yeah.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
Well, remember that show existed prior to YouTube.
But
Well,
it-
that
nowadays,
was
but I
YouTube
mean,
before there was
nowadays,
YouTube. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I actually have a project with it's Vindabona Productions, which also has Fishbowl. I actually have a project with them for a reality project. Nothing that I'm in, but just a thing I'm an executive producer on. So.
I was gonna say Andrew's funniest home videos.
Oh no! I actually got to meet with Vindabono a while ago. A neat guy, very very neat guy. So
Is his beard longer than mine?
having a beard.
Righty.
Your beard looks way better. By the way, looking at like from 2 weeks ago when we last did this, you had kind of like the Shaggy beard from Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
Now you're the sea captain that was masquerading as the ghost shark.
People are already sending me pictures of the Gorton's fishermen saying, like, you look great.
You were haunting your own theme park because you were trying to sell it, and it wasn't for those pesky kids.
Hey, what do you want to chat about on After Things?
What would you like to chat about?
I don't,
I mean, I can talk about. I got a thing to talk about.
yeah, I might have something to talk about. I
Ooh.
I
don't know.
might just jump in and hijack it at any point where I feel like the show is lagging or falling behind. Okay, got it. Your beard isn't good enough.
Beard growth is a good topic. We should bring that up.
All right. Bryce, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Take it away in 3, 2.
Welcome to After Things, the show where we talk about after things. And I'm joined by my After Things co-host, Brian Brushwood.
Oh, hello, beautiful people. It's good to be back. I'm sorry I missed last week.
And I actually interrupted both of them as they were stroking their beards. Justin Robert Young.
I mean,
everybody.
I don't want to create a wedge, a divide between us. I'm just saying. I mean,
Are you
is a
comparing
great
your beard
visual
to
bit.
Justin's, like your beard length?
yeah, I'm
Have
going
you
to rub
seen
my
how
beard on
fast
the
he
microphone.
grows?
Yeah, Justin was clean shaven a few weeks ago. Like he'll catch up if he wanted to.
That's not. It's not possible. Hair grows at the same rate, give or take. It's
Permanently, I'm like the Fast and the Furious car that has unlimited NOS, dog.
See,
It's always full torque.
now I feel like I can't shave so that we can science this and go. Like,
I mean, again, listen, I know where this. I'm just trying to cut to the point where either you say we're not doing ZZ Top or we're going to be at ZZ Top next summer.
I'm not saying that. I'm just waiting. We're waiting for the right moment.
Yeah, you're like, it grows at the same rate. I'm like, I have to think, like, when did I shave? Friday?
Last week.
I think I shaved Friday.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Gentlemen, we're not here to talk about this. Well, we could be. There has been a very interesting announcement. Netflix has announced, in their announcement that they announced, that they are going to buy a ton of content. I heard like a figure, like, I forgot. Let me see. They're doing a capital raise actually to increase the amount of money. But they're looking to shift the amount of original content on their network to like, let me get the number here.
I think 8 billion is what I heard.
That's the number I heard, and they just raised like 1.6 billion.
Yeah, they're going to raise $8 billion to get to original content because they've been saying they want half of their catalog to be original content for.
Yeah, they expect to spend between 7 and 8 billion on original content in 2018.
Wow.
That's an insane amount of money. That's not big for like entertainment. That's big for like life. That's big for all of business.
So I'm going to give you an example of how big that is. Like I've heard, and I'm not going to name names or anything like this. I heard somebody said, "Oh yeah, I'm working on a magic project or for a magic special for somebody that's Netflix related." I'm like, "Oh, cool." Somebody else says, "Yeah, I'm working on a magic thing for this person for Netflix." And then somebody else, "Oh yeah, we're doing some magic related things." So I've heard of at least 3 different magic projects.
Wow.
Being done for Netflix. And I think that because I know that like when they did, I think the David Blaine stuff, I think that tested really well. And I think that they look at for the cost. I know that in speaking in general, Netflix budgets are not what they used to be for some kinds of show, particularly reality stuff and all that. So it's easiest for them they can buy that kind of content and there's a market for it. They can say, hey, we're not going to pay network rates, but we'll do better than cable. It's a very interesting space. And so the amount of content the number of people I know who have had green-lighted Netflix shows now, like I'm thinking like in the last couple months that I know, and they're not even other stuff too. I'm like with this production company, whatever. There is a lot of stuff coming out. And it's a very different paradigm. And I was talking yesterday on my Periscope session, people were talking about like act structure when it comes to TV. And I'm explaining like you gotta be specific what you mean on TV. There's broadcast television, which is an hour is really 40 minutes. There's acts are structured around commercial breaks. Then you have cable, which can be a little bit different. And then you can have cable like HBO where there's no breaks. And a show can be an hour long. And you talk about Netflix where things are often, I know what I'm going to be doing October 27th to October 28th.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if you didn't know, then you haven't gone to Netflix.com recently because they're announcing here's what you'll be doing in exactly 3 days, 16 hours, and 42 minutes from now.
Yeah. Stranger Things too. So that's
Get Down. Sorry,
what's that?
The Get Down.
Yeah. So and they did some things where they did like things like the Get Down where they paid $10-15 million per episode. Did that and that. And that was it's kind of interesting because Netflix last year, in 2016, they had a couple high profile shows they spend a lot of money on, particularly like the Get Down, etc. Stranger Things wasn't is nowhere near the budget those shows had. And now Stranger Things has become this incredibly big phenomenon now.
And well deserved too. I mean, it truly is an extraordinary piece of storytelling that really does, it hits all four quadrants.
Here's the thing that Bryce just highlighted. In 2016, Netflix spent $5 billion on original programming. 5 of the 10 shows people searched for most often last year are Netflix originals, company officials said. So, I mean, to give you an idea, so they're looking to create 1,000 hours of content. That's what they did before. So, I mean, that's the half of all shows that we like are on Netflix.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
So much of where all other revenue can be generated is from wholly owned original properties. If you've looked at the marketing or just the merch spend and the deals that they're making for Stranger Things, it's hard to not look at that and say, wow, that's an entire untapped resource for them to create shows that, are not necessarily are like toyetic in the way that you would think of movies, but certainly for demographics that want to buy things with these properties on them. Those are entire businesses they can get into.
Do you think that they're going to be able to resist the urge to monetize with like ad placement or place products or I don't know. For all I know, maybe they're already doing that. But by and large, I perceive the Netflix original library as being straight up, we're paying for Netflix. Netflix is paying for content. It's that pure artistic ecosystem that we want to believe in. Do you think it stays that way, or does it start to devolve?
Well, it's not an artistic reason that they do it necessarily. It can be part of it. It is commercial in the sense that you watch Netflix, you don't get commercials. You pay, I'm paying for this, and I don't get that. And that's part of what's differentiated them from Hulu and other platforms is that, the ads and stuff that go in front of things. And they do they'll do some promos and stuff for other content there. But, I get frustrated when I want to watch, something on Amazon Prime and I got to jump through a commercial from whatever because Amazon's trying to leverage this. Netflix to me is the thing that annoys me now about the Netflix on my Apple TV, though, is how they autoplay stuff. When I just kind of want to browse and I don't want to have them do the little trailers for each show, but I get why they're doing this. But I don't think that would be a good idea. I don't think they think it would be a good idea. Who knows 10 years from now what they decide to do? Oh, we're going to do a Netflix Lite because we have so much, if they get to a certain point of penetration of audience and they know the rest of the audience is not going to come on board at any price, then maybe they do an ad, Netflix with ads version. I don't know, but I think they've been very true to this.
What you're saying that that it's not necessarily the ads, it's more that Coke's going to pay to make sure that everybody in the scene is drinking Cokes with the labels out.
Yeah, that's where I feel like if there's a compromise shift, that's where it's going to be. Not so much in that they're doing pre-rolls for
But even then, I almost feel like that comes at a point where Netflix wants to continue to scale out how much original stuff they have, and maybe there now becomes far different tiers of like, all right, well, this gets this amount of budget. You can do whatever you want with this amount of money, but if you really want to make it seem, you want to stretch that dollar even further, then we'll okay that, your dog detective only uses Yahoo to search for things.
And Bing.
So apparently there already are product placement in things like Netflix. Or we'll see. I'm looking at some of the things because I'm seeing there's a Copart show that's an ABC show, but then they're like, oh, it's on Netflix too. Well, that doesn't mean that Netflix produced it. So let's see this.
That's actually really encouraging to hear because if they are already doing it, I feel like in my experience, they're doing it in such a way that's not intrusive, not like as you'll hear Red Letter Media deride Sony Pictures for its crassness in that regard.
So here's some examples. BEN, which is owned by Bill Gates, places products and TV shows, streaming content, and digital influencers. The company did over 6,000 placements last year, including Dunkin' Donuts and GM into House of Cards, Tin Cup Whiskey in Jessica Jones, and Jose Cuervo in Fuller House. So
Weird. I don't even remember those House of Cards ones.
Yeah, I mean, neither.
getting your company in a Netflix or Amazon show can cost between $50,000 to $500,000 per episode.
Wow.
Well, and I guess the question there is, it seems like Netflix has a little bit more of that leverage where it's like, all right, we'll take your money, but here's what you get. A visible Dunkin' Donuts behind Frank Underwood while he threatens somebody not to release the pictures, and not Frank Underwood walking in and saying, meet me at the Dunkin' Donuts. I'll be in the back by the Frappuccino cups. Like,
They're
America
delicious.
runs on me. I'm Frank Underwood.
So you'll get, and part of it too is a lot of these deals are often co-productions where Netflix doesn't pay for the whole thing entirely. They pay for 50% or X part of it. And in a co-production deal, you might get some financing from, because we do product placement, and there's already product placement in movies and things like that. But yeah, I think that there's going to be a balance there. And you would hear like broadcasters would get breathless about the idea of like, oh, and you could watch the latest episode of The Good Wife with your app open, and if you like that gown, you could click on it and then you could buy it. And it's like, what are you trying to create? Like, you're not creating a product for people to really consume. You're just trying to figure out how we can take our pricing gun and stick it on everything and just end up making a crappy product. By the way, any product placement that ever come in a possible Naturalist television show, I fully endorse. So
America runs on the Naturalist.
yeah. So I think that it's exciting, but it's a very interesting era that we're in, and where the way things promote, the way things move, Netflix has this advantage that Netflix is this brand, and they've got a really good brand. Amazon Prime has been trying, but a lot of their shows have just been misses. They're doing a new slate. We talked about this before. They're going to try to make Ringworld into a series. They're going to do some other amazing properties. They want their own Game of Thrones. They want their own defining thing. Amazon tried their own approach towards metrics, but I think the problem is that I think it came across kind of like engineers who were kind of very dismissive of how certain things work to some degrees. Like, oh, we'll just test market the script, and if people like the script, then we'll test market a read through, and then we'll test market the read through, and then we'll fully fund it to go to series. And it's like, there's a lot of things in there, steps that are kind of a lot more messy as far as how it's made. And Netflix.
And specifically, it's the fact that you can only press certain buttons once. The mere fact of having done it reduces the ability to do it again. You might have a modified version of that where the audience gets to vote once, and then there's radio silence, and then out comes fully formed stuff that they had a meaningful impact in helping to shape and create. Whereas, letting them vote on every part of the ride makes it not fun for them.
Even the whole pilot system. Remember, there was really, really messy with the Zombieland creators, where they did a pilot that people weren't super fond of, and so it turned into this shouting match to the public with the Zombieland guys. And there's been a few other pilots that probably weren't the best, but they had famous names in them, and so they just got watched more, and therefore they got more votes. And I don't know if it has proven out to be the best way to find original programming.
Yeah, that system would not have brought you Stranger Things.
Correct.
Yeah. That system would not have brought there was no way that would have worked there. And then the Stranger Things, by the way, too, was an evolution of where they started from. They talked about House of Cards. They did that because, hey, people like Kevin Spacey movies. Hey, David Fincher's really great. Hey, let's take some of this data we know. We think that Kevin Spacey is, an underrated actor with a lot of potential for episodic. We think David Fincher could bring this element to it, and some other showrunners were involved with it. Stranger Things was sort of a bet on, the directors and the showrunner for it, to say that we think this team, we think they're a quality team, we think they could do something great. And gosh, they did. And then you take a look at like something like Iron Fist, which was like one of the lowest rated Netflix shows ever, which looked like a bit of a misfire. But don't worry, that showrunner went on to go create the Inhumans.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, off to network television with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes too, and I don't mean to pick on anybody. I should not do that, but it is this, it's hard, and you don't know, like, it's a town where people don't necessarily know why something's a success. They'll go look at, like, Stranger Things, it's those great kids they had, it's Winona Ryder, and it's like, I think it comes back down to the direction and the writing, and then every other decision stems off from there. If you don't have good writing, the best direction of the world can't fix it.
So I've got a question for the After Things audience, and it took me a while to kind of formulate what I had to ask and phrase it in a way that would be generic enough so that we're not talking about any specific projects. But in general, do you guys have any tactics or habits that you employ to manage the time when a project that you care deeply about is in a bit of a holding pattern? Because by this point, all three of us have had various projects that are very, there's go times. And then there's, well, you're going to have to wait 2 to 3 months until it's the right time to pitch or the right season for X, Y, or until this project comes out. How do you guys manage that waiting time? Because I don't think any of us especially loves taking it easy.
My answer was, I went through that when I was first trying to pitch my own television show. The first thing I did was, when I first started pitching years ago, I realized I could go pitch a magic show maybe once a year. I could go make the rounds to networks pitching something, and then I needed to wait a year before I did anything else. So what I did with my producing partner, Mary Jarris, was we pitched other shows. So I came up with other shows, sold shows to Lionsgate. And selling a show means you bring an idea to a studio. They might pay you some money for to say, all right, we'll pay you to develop it, whatever. And then, 90% of the time, nothing happens. But I did that with Lionsgate. I did that with G4 Underground came from that. I did that with some other projects with other networks, et cetera, where I would just go pitch other things that weren't magic related. And then when it was time to go pitch, I'd go pitch a magic show again. And like every 2 years or so, or 3 years, I ended up doing a pilot. But when I got tired of that, always sort of like waiting, that was when I started writing books. That was 6 years ago, leaving South by Southwest. I was going through this holding pattern, waiting to find out about some stuff. And actually at a point where I was less enthusiastic about going out and pitching. And I said, why don't I write novels? So that way, when I have downtime, I can just write a book. And that's where that came from. And now I go through this holding pattern with books where I wait for like, oh, so-and-so's got this option. They're going to try to take it out, make it into a series. Great. I'm going to go write another book and start a completely new property. And so I have multiple properties at any given time, can be in various states of development.
What about you, Justin?
A lot of that experience with Andrew, I was there for, and it was intensely frustrating. And not only for Andrew, but also the entire kind of business, which revolved around Andrew's output. So all that was very kind of instructive for me, specifically in the idea that I don't want to do it. And I have probably been too distrustful of kind of systems that make you wait around. And so it's probably shied me more so than it should away from waiting on people. In terms of my own stuff, I don't know. It's just it's so hard to say, well, this is in a holding pattern when you're kind of doing it every week. So a lot of the stuff that I do just requires X amount of effort, and I guess doesn't necessarily put me in that same mindset.
Well, but are there pitches you have out for things, like whether it's an event coming up that and this is me totally making up. Hopefully I'm not accidentally stumbling into actual situations you're in. But like for where you are, I would imagine that there's a number of companies that are like, well, we have our corporate bleedily blah, and we're looking for a master of ceremonies, and it's you and another guy. Like do you have any gigs like that are just floating around waiting? And if not, are you interested in pursuing those big harvest opportunities?
I mean, I haven't. And by the way, it's more. It was more on display than ever over the weekend at TwitchCon, when all these people that I went to this Twitch hosting thing with a couple months ago all had gigs at TwitchCon, and a lot of that I'm sure was them following up and doing everything that you should and talking to the kind of agents that were there, and I didn't do any of that, largely because at the point that I went to it, I was still in the middle of the Kickstarter, and I was dealing with the injury thing, and like the idea of kind of expanding was not in my wheelhouse. Now going forward, would I? Maybe, but I feel like my day to day is so jam packed. And again, there was really the number one lesson of working through that period with Andrew is like, you can't emotionally let somebody else hold you up creatively. Like that is a painful, annoying road. And you know, even if it's outside, if that lesson is outsized, because I watched it on the outside instead of Andrew actually dealing with his being the work that we were waiting on. Like it was something that to me was the almost the number one lesson of how to deal with outsiders is like always be the master of your domain. You are working on something that you control at all times, or else you will just let yourself be destroyed by the slow moving effects of other people.
You just don't want to be in a position where you're, exactly that. Like I'm gonna invoke his name again, and that's Elon Musk. And I have a project I'm working on with an engineering friend, and we needed a part, and not a very complicated part, but we needed a part last week. And we got together to work. We work on it once a week, and we got together to work on it this week, and we'd forgotten to order the part. It was just kind of a group. We forgot to do this thing. And, we're like, we are in a position where we could say, well, let's wait till next week, and order the parts. We'll have it next week. And I'm like, well, we've waited a week, and that'll add another week. That'll be 2 weeks now. 2 weeks that we should have had this thing solved, and we're 2 weeks behind. And if we're only meeting together one day a week, that's like being, 3 months behind, in the project. It's like 3 or 4 months behind of where we could be if we got it done. So I'm like, let's go to Fry's. I'm going to figure this out. And, went and was able to improvise a part that worked really, really well, and just said, I know there's the way we're supposed to do it, but we're not going to do it the way we're supposed to do it. We're going to do a way that works. And it was, and I keep, I thought about, and, this is my tiny little stupid thing, but, there was a story in the Ashley Vance biography about Elon Musk when I think they were working on the Falcon 9 rocket, and they did a very clever thing, which was in order to store like your cryogenic oxygen and your kerosene, you have these aluminum tanks. At that point, they're using these aluminum tanks, not the graphite they're moving to for the BFR. And to save money, they realized that if the aluminum's of the right quality of aluminum, the right welds, you don't need to buy it from an aerospace company, because then it's going to cost you 20 times what you should normally pay for it. They sourced a company in the Midwest that made agricultural equipment. If you look at a fertilizer plant, these big, huge facilities for processing things and doing stuff, they've got cryogenics, they're building stuff, they're doing things at the same scale, same pressurization, etc. It's just not, it's for a different application. So they found a company that made these tanks, and they said, okay, we'd like to order a tank. Like, great, yeah, we think we can have this thing delivered to you in 4 weeks' time. Like, great, 4 weeks' time, we're going to have this tank, and we can start building the rest of the rocket. 4 weeks goes by, there's no tank. Call the place. Yeah, no, we're working on it. We should have it, we think, another week or whatever. Another like a week goes by. There's no tank. Well, a few days later, the head of the company, and I'm paraphrasing the story, but this is the gist of it. Head of the company gets a call. It's 7:00 at night, and they're like, there's very few people. They're like, hey, there's a guy named Elon Musk here. He flew in on his private jet and wants to know what the holdup is with the tank. And they go, and he's like, yeah, no, this is really important. We really need this. We're trying to build a rocket. This is just holding us up. And the tank got done, and boom. And that was the level at which he went to solve that problem. The level at which he went to say, I need this thing. I will fly there and do this, because if I don't have this, we don't get to build the rest of it.
So I would love to hear you guys chime in on, I know that I think it's safe to say all three of us tend to, for the 10-year history of our three-way relationship, have always been working in parallel. And yet there are people very successful people who do everything in series, or I don't know, maybe I'm making that up. Do you think there's inherently a strength to working in parallel versus in series?
I mean,
well, and by that you mean working on a bunch of different projects versus working on one project at a time?
Correct. And at any given moment, one of those pots is getting ready to boil over. Others of them are kind of quiet at given times.
I I'll get going to my time management because you tell me, because like I spent Saturday working on that technical aspect of that project that I had to go work with. And so, my partner came down to LA, we worked on part of it. And then yesterday, I spent 3 hours writing part of a book proposal. And then I spent 3 hours working on a technical, a coding project, interspersed with all sorts of, things like that. And I certainly handle things in series. Like I need to get this much done here. And then once I'm done with that, instead of watching a movie or doing something else, I will go dive into this other thing. But I have timelines that I know that this is due here. So I will do this much for this timeline. I'll do this much for this timeline. And I know that I can only do so much. I can marathon writing, but I can't marathon write every day. I would just burn out. So I know that, I can spend 3 hours here, 3 hours here. If I have to do a book and get a book done in 2 weeks, then I know, okay, I can spend 3 hours a day and it'll be done. So I work in parallel, but in a week it's in series, or in a day, I work in sort of like 3 or 4 hour increments.
Sure. Well, basically, you multitask the way Windows does in time slices. Like you have to do one thing and then stop and then do the other thing.
100%.
I guess I think of it in terms of the plate spinner can only focus his attention in series, but he's keeping a massively parallel number of plates spinning, which I think is key. I think anybody, when you ask what they're up to, there are some people who announce that they are working on a Bleed-a-Blah, and then now their job is to wait to find out how Bleed-a-Blah was received, and then they'll do their next thing. And I feel like the three of us are all cut from the DNA that says, no, the moment that Bleed-a-Blah is in wait mode, you're working on the Joopy Joop.
I cannot say it enough. It is the surest fire way, like in the same way that being an entrepreneur and being self-employed can give you tremendous freedom and can kind of be in so many ways a hack on what is considered to be modern society and allowing you to do whatever you want and sleep when you want and work when you want and take care of stuff. The original sin of it is the wait. And allowing yourself emotionally to be dictated to by other people's agendas. And if you are not actively waking up every day and saying, am I frustrated with this? Is there anything else I can do to alleviate my side of that frustration? Then you are on the road to an eroded mental state, is in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll talk to people and they'll go like, oh, yes, you have a lot going on. And I'm like, okay. I mean, yes, I do. As a human, I do. But there's so many sort of things. From my point of view, I'm like, no, like 3 books a year. It's like, all right, at max, the average time that it takes me to finish a book is 2 or 3 weeks, right? So if I'm writing 3 books a year, and that's doing other things, not just that, but half of my day for 2 weeks working on a book. Right. So that means that to do 3 books a year, I need 6 weeks to do that. Right. Well, that leaves me with 46 weeks out of the year. OK, there's all the other little things that come in there, read drafts, all these other stuff. You add that. So let's take another 6 weeks off. Still leaves me with 40 weeks out of the year. And that's where I do these other sorts of things. I don't do things that collide with each other. I had an offer to go overseas for 2 weeks, get paid really good money to go consult on something that I might have taken up, in the summer or earlier in the year, but I had to say no. I couldn't say yes to that because there wasn't one thing that would have affected my income during that period that I said, I'm making money doing this other thing, but it was juggling all those other things. I'd say, nah, it would be disruptive to those things, and the payoff is later. The Naturalist, I don't know if you've heard me talk about it, it's been doing really well. And there's behind the scenes, it's been doing well, and maybe I'll have something to talk about in a couple weeks, hopefully. But I'm not sitting here going, yep, I got this thing done. Look at this book. And I'm not even sitting on the fact that I already wrote the sequel and that's done and comes out in March, or the fact that there's 2 more books in the work. I'm starting an entirely different series so that I can, while this thing's doing great, I can set up another property and have something else that's coming out while I've been talking about another property, a kid property, because if I got time to sit around and watch, like, binge watch 30 hours of content a week that I don't really care about, doesn't matter to me, that's 30 hours that could have been spent on an amazing project.
Yeah. Well, there is, I remember in the early days, and again, this is a pre-internet world, I had a 45-minute stage show and I needed to reach a bunch of people. So I would go and download lists from the Yellow Pages, and I would print out 2,000 postcards, knowing that I would get a 1% to 2% response rate on, hey, Brian Brushwood's going to be in your area in Atlanta, these dates to these dates. Would you like to book him for a show or whatever? It was very seductive to turn on a movie and stamp those and say, look at me, I'm working, even though it's kind of fun and I'm having a good time. And likewise, I would imagine for big projects, it's very seductive to a lot of people to say, well, I've done my job. I've submitted my things. And now my job is to wait to find out if I got the gig. And while it's very seductive, if you're going to have a grown-up attitude about it from 1,000 feet up, you're going to recognize that that's not the best expenditure of your time, energy, and effort.
Well, and ultimately, it's like you have to understand where recharging your batteries end. If there's a certain amount of mental trauma that goes into putting yourself out there and preparing how you're going to look to the outside world, you want to know what? You should take the time to watch a movie while you're stamping your envelopes, right? But at some point, your batteries are going to be full. And at that point, you're actively going to be expending energy worrying about waiting, and when you are getting too much into that, flinching whenever your cell phone buzzes because you're, looking for the email, at a certain point, that's always going to happen, right? If there's a big thing coming down the pike and, it could happen in the next 12 hours, then understandable. But if you're just flinching whenever your cell phone goes off because, this may be it, this thing that might happen within the next 4 months, then that you got to occupy that mind, man. You got to spend those cycles better.
Dude, and I'll tell you what, man, you're talking to somebody who, after taking a week off to totally focus on the family batteries are 100% full. And I woke up this morning, I have not been this excited to be in studio for a full rock block 6-hour day of podcasting in forever. And all it took was that 1 week of being out on the road and filling those batteries. And now all I want to do is have these conversations.
Yeah, you need to have that, hey, I need to reset, let my mind go blank for a little bit. I'm a big believer in that. And I'm one of these people, like, I see myself as sort of lazy because I can count the number of times a day where I just goof off and I don't do anything work related. But that's why I work from the moment I get up till I go to sleep. There's not a point where I say, today I'm done. But I played the Stranger Things game on my iPad. I finished that, and that was, I'm not a good gamer, so it took me like 10 hours. It would take somebody else an hour to do, but I had fun and I enjoyed it. And that's over the last week. That's 10 hours that I spent, because if I'm working on coding, I sometimes have to take a nap because my brain just gets full up because I watch these videos, I go put this thing in there, and there's a lot of information I have to process. And from the outside, it looks cool. Like, oh, Andrew learned this, and friends like, oh, Andrew just learned this in 5 hours. I'm like, no, I'm not. It's hard. It's hard for me to pick these things up, but I just have to be persistent. So I think there is that. Hey, let me go do this. And my finger has hovered on buying myself a Nintendo Switch a number of times. I came very, very close to buying myself a Vive, and just like, hey, it'd become kind of, but just because the idea of it probably is more entertaining to me. You need that balance, but man, there is. I invoke his name again. Elon Musk is building spaceships, digging tunnels underneath the surface of the planet. He's got an electric car company. He's building humongous battery facilities. He's building the largest factories on the planet. He's a human. He's a human. He is an exceptionally rare human who has a very different way of looking at things. We can't be him. We cannot be him, and he cannot be us. But a human is capable of doing all of these things, and it sounds like it's an extremely stressful thing to do. But imagine what you could do if you were 5%. as effective as he was.
Or better yet, just 5% more effective than you are right now. Like whatever you're doing, there's untapped bandwidth in there. As long as you, I don't know. I don't want to be the guys on the internet just wagging a finger saying everybody work harder. But I am going to say that it is as strange and wonderful to us what is happening. I don't know how to put it.
I would say this: understand the problem you're trying to solve. When I go do my Periscope sessions and I talk to people and people ask me for advice, like, "Oh, I want to go do blank," and I've been thinking about doing this for a while. I'm like, "How much research have you done? Have you spent 5 hours digging into this?" Or if I'm reading the Reddit message boards and somebody's like, "Hey, everybody, here's my idea," and they get torn apart because they couldn't bother to do 30 minutes of research to find out why it was a horrible idea. Or why we think that it's a horrible idea, and not that maybe there is some angle to it, is that sometimes people just, when it comes to creating or this, we just want to go, look what I did, or I want the trophy. It's like, check out the problem. I'm not going to show up. I did judo for years. I wasn't going to show up in a judo tournament and just expect that, because I was determined that, and I got in the match, I had to study, I had to learn, I had to get my butt kicked, and I had to figure that out. But that made me better at it. With writing, I didn't just sit down and say, I'm going to write a book. I tried that. They sucked. It was when I said, man, I'm going to pick up a book. I get people ask me some basic questions. It's like, how do I do this genre? Pick up a book you like and ask how they did it. How did they do this? How do people solve this? If you want to be a podcaster, we often look at the outside. I get people look at the outside of what I'm doing and thinking like, it's just effortless for him. It ain't. I probably work harder than most people at it, because some things aren't automatic for me. So study the problem, understand the scope of the problem, and you'll find out that you might be able to get these things done a lot easier. Sometimes you figure out what is the right size problem for you to tackle that, and then your capacity for problem solving increases. You get better and better and better because you know the scope of it. Writing a book for me is pretty effortless because I know the scope of the problem. I know how to break it down. I know how to get it down. It wasn't like that before. So,
do you guys want to talk picks?
Surely.
Sure.
I got a weird pick that I honestly don't know how I feel about yet, and we're gonna talk about it on Cord Killers. But I started watching the new Netflix Mindhunter. Have you guys seen this?
Mm-hmm. I've heard. I haven't seen it, but I read the book that it was based on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, John Douglas. Yeah.
It's a bit weird from a narrative perspective because I'm having a hard time figuring out who the bad guys are, because there keep being characters that look like they're going to be antagonistic and they look like they're shutting this guy down. And then by the end of the discussion, there's like, yeah, no, that's great. That'll be a huge help. Let's try that. And then they work together to go forward. Like 2 or 3 times in the first 2 episodes, this already happened. But I like the conceit is this is essentially the genesis of the idea of the serial killer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the John Douglas, whose book it was based upon, was the guy that basically is one of the pioneers for profiling, right? And his book was sort of his, hey, this is what I did to establish, to create profiling and kind of introduce the idea of how do you create a profile for, serial killers. So Jack Crawford in Silence of the Lambs, the character that was played by God, I love the actor. But that was based on, actually, I'm going to Google him. Was based in part on John Douglas. So, I mean, I think that it's a very interesting story. But then when you talk to some people, sort of Scott Glenn, you talk to some people within law enforcement and stuff. I've in a couple of my books, I've been sort of critical of profiling in that sense, not like in the common term we're used to, where like on the street. But some of these profiles, because there's such a limited data set often enough that you might find a pattern and decide that that's a norm. And there have been a number of investigations that Atlanta child murders, were one, which I think that took them a while to get around to the idea that maybe it was a black person from the community did that. The Beltway snipers. Beltway snipers were a classic example of where the profiles were completely wrong, and the confidence in the profiles were part of the problem. That was sort of the frustration from there, was that, here we had these people that were, getting murdered left and right by a sniper, and where had this, the profile was, and I'm not saying this unit was responsible for it or it was Douglas's fault, whatever. It was like, oh, we think it's a, middle-aged white guy probably on top of a service truck, was a black guy and his teenage accomplice shooting from a blue Caprice where they cut a hole in the back, and that because of the confidence in the profile, they drove through police roadblocks multiple times.
Wow.
So it's an interesting story, and they have values, but they are, if you don't use good data to figure out how do you test this, is this, because if you start looking up serial killers, you start to see there absolutely are patterns, biting, things like this. There are certain patterns to certain behaviors and stuff, but a lot of the other demographics about these things constantly change. So, anyhow, that's my thought.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting book,
This is a website that I've gone to a lot lately as I've kind of stepped up the 5-day-a-week politics coverage stemming out of the Politics podcast, and that is Axios.com, Axios.com. Mike Allen was one of the founders of Politico, founded it, but I just think it's a really cool idea. There's always this question of like, all right, if you want to start a blog or a media company in 2017, what do you do? And this is a guy who started Politico, which would very quickly became a must go to reading place for political coverage, and he's decided to mix technology and politics in these very short, just the facts kind of, but a little bit more effort than a blog aggregate thing. It kind of goes against the grain of like, no, you're going to read this stuff for the personality of the writers. It's like, no, you just want the facts as fast as possible, as shareable as possible, that make you feel like you got something out of the website. I very much enjoyed it. So go check it out.
What is the URL again?
Axios.com, Axios.com.
Cool. I like.
Side note, I just realized that the next time we'll talk to each other, we'll probably all have stories/horror stories of trying to pre-order the new iPhone, right?
Oh,
That's this Friday.
X gonna give it to you. He gonna give it to you.
So did I do Movies Anywhere as a pick on this show or the show?
I don't think you did.
No, I don't think you did.
But
Are
it's
you
a
aware of
cool
Movies
thing.
Anywhere?
Yeah, we've talked about it on Cord Killers last week. Movies
So
Anywhere used to be Disney Movies Anywhere.
Yeah, so I'll do the plug for it here. So Movies Anywhere is a app platform by 20th Century Fox, Sony, Universal, Disney, and WB. And so what they've done is they said, hey, maybe if people didn't have to worry about their movies being siloed on different platforms, they might be willing to buy more movies. I buy all my things on iTunes. Like Brian, you do a lot on Amazon,
Yep.
et cetera. And that sort of can lead to, hey, I want to watch this here, whatever. So this was started by Disney. It was Disney Movies Anywhere. Now they're all on board. And so what they do is they have apps that are available for Apple TV, the iPhone, Android, Roku, Kindle Fire, Amazon Fire TV, and Chromecast. So if you buy your movies from Amazon, you can watch them. If you bought them on iTunes, you can watch them. If you bought them on Google, you can watch them. So it's a wonderful way to say, hey, let's just give you one place.
The only hiccup about it is that it's based on the partner studios. So like Paramount is still not a part of this. And I believe there's another big one that's not in it yet. But a lot of stuff transfers over, including things like digital extras, like outtakes or gag reels, things like that. I know some of that stuff on iTunes transfers over, so it's pretty cool. And I don't know if they're still doing it. They are. If you hook up 2 of your accounts to this thing, you actually get 5 free movies.
Yeah.
And it's. I already had an iTunes account and an Amazon account, so it's like, hey, free movies.
Yeah, and it's I think that alone, that doesn't cost you anything to do that, is great. I mean, that's how much they think to incentivize you to sign up for is great. So I think it's a great idea because I have stuff that gets siloed, and I have some devices I use because the content's there, and some devices I use because I love the way the device works. So kind of a happy solution. And I'm glad to see they were able to get together. Oh man, and something I forgot to mention too. We were talking about the Netflix thing, and we can talk about this later on. There are rumors that Apple is going to be buying a bunch of real estate in Los Angeles for doing their own productions and their own development.
Yeah, that we've circled around some of those rumors on Cord Killers. I don't know what to make of them because Apple's been doing an awful lot of getting ready to get ready for, I don't know, a decade now.
I mean, having recently been in the offices of some of their partners for stuff out here and having seen this is the property that they're going to be getting and to know some of the people they're hiring. I'm not talking, I mean, know that there was their whole, yes, they were trying to get everybody on board into like a whole Apple platform. Now the model is we need to be creating more content, and they have been doing that. They now produce shows. They did, Planet of the Apps, which I don't know anybody who watched that, but that was an Apple produced show. They just bought the rights to, what is this? Apple is producing, which is this?
They did the carpool karaoke thing, right? That's Apple produced.
Yeah, and there's another, they did they're doing Amazing Stories with Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
So they're rebooting Amazing Stories with Spielberg, and so they're trying to work in Brian Fuller, so they're trying to work at a super high level. So that's a straight up narrative play. So I think, yeah, I mean I think Brian, I think the problem is there was this, well, we're going to maybe do this, we're maybe going to do that, and that kind of thing didn't get through. In the meantime, owning your own original content seems to be a very good idea. And you look at how, we make a big deal about Netflix announcing that they're going to spend $8 billion on original content. Apple has got hundreds of billions of dollars in cash, and a lot of that around the world. And if Apple wanted to start saying, yeah, we're going to spend 2% of that, we're going to spend just part of the interest on developing original content, that's this wonderful bonus when you have an Apple product or whatever. And we got Steven Spielberg, we got this, we got all that. Netflix was in a great model because Netflix says, hey, just pay us this flat monthly fee like you do cable, whatever, but we're not cable. We're not, you're not tied down there. We'll buy a bunch of older movies and let you watch those. Then we'll make some special deals on new movies so you know that it's justifiable. Then we're going to grow and we'll start developing our own content. And that $10 a month gets you some great stuff. Apple is trying to sell you, their monthly subscription services or their yearly subscriptions. Amazon's trying to do this. So it doesn't, for them to say, hey, we could, Apple has the budget to produce dozens of Game of Thrones level shows and only detract a little bit from their marketing budget. So,
yes, I 100% agree. And the enthusiasm that you're feeling, I felt 4 or 5 years ago for a different wave of it. And maybe this is the time that it hits instead. But
they weren't commissioning producers at this level before, though. They weren't doing that, though. That would say that was the difference, is that now that they've actively, we're seeing Apple shows, and now they're ramping up on it. And I don't know if it'll be good. I don't know. I would say that I've heard anecdotally what the experiences were and working with more recently that side of it, and the outcome was not necessarily something anybody was really happy with. But this is the first they've said this is where their studios or places they're looking to buy, and then they're making Amazing Stories. They're making content now,
right? And hopefully it will be like finally the dam is burst.
We'll see. I don't know if they'll be able to pull it off, though. I don't know, and that's the thing. I don't know.
That's my question is, I don't think that they found the best possible person for Apple Music, and Apple Music still has problems, right? Like Jimmy Iovine, there's almost no doubt that he is a guy that was a top of his industry kind of guy that knows what cool is, that is still on the leading edge of how to market to the core demographic, and Apple Music still has problems. I don't know if they've found their Jimmy Iovine for original television production, and I don't know if any of the moves they've made make me any more excited for it. But hell, they got a crap ton of money, and they're Apple, so.
Yep. Gentlemen, it's been after.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Cool.
Alrighty.
Good
I gotta
shows.
run.
All right. Bye, Andrew.
All right, take
Bye.
care, bud. I
Enjoy your
gotta,
beards.
I gotta sift through some emails.
Sure. Thank you everybody for showing up to. Oh wait, I don't need to do that. For showing up to the show. We're gonna have Cord Killers in 2 hours with your friend in mind, your friend in mind hunting. Your friend of mine, Jason Murphy, will be in studio, I believe.
Oh shit!
So stay tuned for that. Are you doing a show? Are you getting another show Mondays now, or did everything move for you, Justin?
No, yeah, 1-900 Wrestling in the top of the hour, and then we move over to Dills's stream and we stream a little Hearthstone for a little bit. So
Fun.
a fun time for the 18 to 35-year-old male demographic.
Well, you've got plenty of options, people at home. But until then, we're gonna
Peace
see you
out.
guys later. Bye.
Paralyze my